Hey, Wide Awake family. If you see this, it's your sign to smash that like button. Yes, you listening right now. That way YouTube shows you more amazing stories like this one. We love you all. Now enjoy the stories.
I never thought a Hinge match would pull me into something that felt like the start of a true crime podcast. I'm not the type who goes around telling wild stories, so every time I think about this night, it still doesn't feel real. I wasn't even planning to go out. I was home, scrolling Hinge and pretending I cared about what people wrote in their bio. Then this girl popped up. Long dark hair, weirdly intense green eyes, kind of mysterious vibe. She liked one of my photos first. That already gave me a bit of excitement because normally I'm the one chasing. We talked for a bit. Her messages were short, but she was super direct. She kept saying I had a trustworthy face. Kinda weird, but whatever. Then she asked me if I wanted to meet that same evening. I shouldn't have thought that was too fast, but I just told myself she was spontaneous. She suggested a beach not too far from me. She called it a special spot. I said sure, pretending I was adventurous, but inside I was thinking it would probably be cold and awkward. The thing is, she didn't give me a real location at first. She only told me the road to park at, then said she'd walk me down. Like she didn't want me to know exactly where it was until she arrived. That was weird thing number two, but again, I ignored it. I get it. Everyone wants to be a little mysterious on dating apps. She told me she might be late and asked me to go first. I got there like 20 minutes early because I didn't want her waiting alone in some random dark beach. I parked and walked through this narrow path between some bushes. I thought the place was going to be peaceful or something. But as I got closer to the shore, I spotted someone already there. At first, I thought it wasn't her because the person was wearing gloves. He was crouched down near the water, kind of digging or pushing something into the sand, like properly burying something. I slowed down because it instantly reminded me of some messed up scene in a movie. He kept looking around, wiping his forehead, then going back to move the sand over whatever it was. I pulled out my phone, reading her messages again, making sure I didn't mix up the place. I messaged her saying I was already here. She didn't reply, but I saw she was still online. I looked back up at the guy, and I swear my heart just dropped. He stood up and looked straight at me. He was tall, shoulders kind of slouched, wearing a hoodie pulled up. Even from a distance I could see his face looked off. Pale, tired, like he hadn't slept in a week. I did this awkward wave like an idiot because I didn't know what else to do. He didn't wave back. He just stared. Then he picked up the gloves, shook the sand off, and stuffed them in his pocket. He started walking toward me a little slow and careful. That's when my brain was like, okay, this isn't right. I stepped back a bit and looked around for anyone else, but it was just empty darkness and waves. As he got closer, he reached into his pocket, and I swear all I could think about was someone pulling out a knife. Just then, I heard sirens. Not like one random patrol car. Loads. Sirens coming from multiple sides. I turned around and saw flashing blue lights bouncing through the trees. Another set came from the road behind me. I froze because I didn't know if they were here for him or for me or for something else by accident. The guy froze too, but only for half a second. Then he sprinted, full speed toward the water. I didn't even know a person could run like that on sand. Cops jumped out of their cars and yelled things I couldn't fully hear because I was freaking out. They pushed past me, shining torches toward the guy who was already halfway into the waves. He tried swimming out, but the waves were rough. Two officers rushed in after him while others were pointing lights at the sand where he'd been digging. One of them yelled something into a radio. Another set of sirens came from somewhere further along the beach. The whole scene was insane. I was just standing there like some clueless extra in a crime show. One officer came up to me and asked who I was and why I was here. I said I was supposed to meet someone. He asked who, and the second I mentioned her name, his entire attitude changed. Serious, like he'd heard that name before. He took my phone and looked at the messages. I wasn't in trouble, but they obviously needed answers. I asked what was happening, because I felt like I had stumbled into something that wasn't meant for me. They told me they had been tracking data from a missing person case. A girl missing from a town not too far away, last seen with a guy she had met online. The police tracked his phone here, near this exact beach. The officer showed me a picture. The girl in the image looked nothing like her Hinge profile picture, but the name matched. It wasn't a fun kind of mind-blown moment. It was a holy crap, what did I almost just walk into moment. I looked back at the sand at the spot he was covering earlier. A bunch of officers were there now, digging systematically. They pulled out a bag, a huge one, thick, zipped up. One officer stepped in front of me so I wouldn't get closer. I didn't need to see what was inside. The whole vibe already told me enough. I felt sick. I felt like my legs were about to give up. They asked if I had told anyone where I was going. I hadn't. They said I was lucky, like extremely lucky. That hit me hard. There was no dramatic ending, no movie music, just cold air, wet shoes, the sound of waves hitting over and over, and cops talking into radios like this was normal for them. They took my statement by the patrol car. I told them everything. Every message. Every weird detail. One of them said the guy was probably planning something and that me arriving early might have ruined his plan. I kept thinking about that moment he stared at me, like he was trying to decide what to do. They eventually let me go. I sat in my car for a long time before I could even start the engine. The Hinge match was deleted by the time I checked again. Her whole profile vanished like she never existed. I didn't even try to report it to Hinge because the police already had everything. I didn't talk to anyone that night. I just went home and lay awake thinking that I could easily become another story buried in the sand. I matched with her on Hinge on a random Wednesday. I wasn't even looking for anything serious. I was bored, just scrolling, waiting for something interesting to pop up. Then there she was. Her profile looked like something from a millionaire lifestyle page. Rooftop pools, crazy city views, designer everything. She looked like the type of girl who would never talk to someone like me in real life. So when she actually matched back and messaged me first, I kinda panicked. She was a bit strange from the start. She typed fast, barely ever used emojis, and kept asking personal stuff like, where do I live, who else lived with me, if anyone knew I was going out that night. I just assumed she was being cautious or something. Girls always worry about safety, right? She said she wanted to meet me at her place because she hated crowded bars and restaurants. Normally I'd say no, but I was too hyped by the idea of stepping into a penthouse like the one she showed off. She sent me the address and told me to come around 9. When I got there, I swear it looked like a building celebrities would hide in. Massive glass doors, a private lobby with a guy in a suit at the desk. He already knew I was coming. Didn't even ask my name. He just pointed to the elevator and said top floor. That alone should have been a red flag for me, but I was too focused on not looking like a total loser. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. When it finally opened, she was already waiting there with this big smile. She looked the same as her pictures, but more intense, like her eyes stared too directly into mine. She gave me a quick hug and pulled me inside before I could even say hi properly. The penthouse was insane. Huge windows with the whole city glowing outside. Everything inside was spotless white and shiny, and she wasn't alone. 2 people were sitting on this fancy couch, a guy and a girl. They looked around my age but kinda drained, like tired but forcing these weird smiles. She said they were her roommates. She didn't introduce their names though. They just stared at me like they were watching me for instructions. I tried talking to them, just small stuff like asking how long they'd lived there. They answered but not normally. Short, quiet replies, eyes flicking toward her before they spoke. I tried not to overthink it, telling myself they were just awkward. She was super touchy with me, grabbing my arm, laughing really loud at stupid things I said, like way too excited. Every time she laughed, the roommates would sit up straighter and smile harder. She said we should move to the dining area for drinks, and the roommates followed behind us like they were attached to invisible leashes. They sat down across from me, hands on their laps, not touching anything. She poured wine and kept bragging about her place, saying she earned everything young, saying she didn't trust many people so the roommates were special to her. The more she talked, the more the whole situation just felt wrong. The roommates weren't interacting like real friends. They kept looking at her like scared to miss something. The guy's hand was slightly shaking while holding the glass she finally allowed him to touch. He kept swallowing hard like he was nervous or something. I asked her what she did for work, trying to change the mood. She just smiled and stared at me too long. Then she said she liked collecting people who deserved good lives. I laughed because I thought she was joking, but the roommates didn't laugh. They stared at their glasses. She kept trying to get me to stay the night there. She said it so casually, like we'd been dating for months. She even mentioned how I shouldn't worry about going home because I could just live here with them, like she already made the decision. She talked like she'd known me forever, listing things I'd never told her, like my job schedule, my favorite food, even my ex's name. I swear I never mentioned that to her. I pretended I needed the bathroom just to get a moment alone. In the hallway, I saw a door open a crack. Inside was another person, sitting on the floor, staring at the wall, wrists tied behind their back, their mouth taped. They noticed me and their eyes widened so fast I thought they'd scream if they could. They started shaking their head like warning me not to go further or not to say anything. My heart went wild. I walked back out and tried not to look freaked out. The roommates were watching me again, but this time there was something in their eyes like begging. They were silently screaming for someone to help. I looked around the room and noticed something I didn't before. Tiny cameras in the corners. One above the dining area. Another one near the kitchen. All pointing toward them, toward us. None pointing outside. Her whole happiness vibe was fake. She was controlling everything. She was watching my face like she wanted to catch me noticing. She asked if I was okay. I just nodded because I didn't know what else to do. She said she got a surprise to show me downstairs in a private room. The roommate's expressions changed instantly. The girl's eyes filled with tears. The guy barely breathed. I said I needed to take a phone call really quick. She didn't like that. She looked annoyed. She told the roommates to make sure I didn't leave. Like she actually said that out loud. They didn't move, but they looked terrified. Not of me leaving, but of what she'd do if I ran. I told her the call was important. She stared into me like she could read if I lied. Then she slowly nodded and told me to hurry. I walked to the elevator trying to act calm. My legs were literally jelly. I pressed the button and waited, hoping it wouldn't take too long. The roommates stayed in the living room, eyes lowered, like they weren't allowed near the elevator. Right before the doors opened, she asked from behind me if I'd come back. Not angry, not upset, just this chilling voice like she already planned to make sure I did. I said, yeah, obviously. She watched me the entire time until the doors shut. Once I got into the lobby, I sprinted, straight past the desk guy who didn't even react. Like seeing terrified people run was normal. Out the building, down the street, until I couldn't see it anymore. I called the police and tried explaining everything that I felt like a psycho trying to describe cameras and taped mouths and weird smiles. They said they'd check it out. They didn't even sound surprised. Like maybe they already knew something about that place. They got my info and told me not to go back there under any reason. I went home and blocked her everywhere. Her Hinge profile disappeared later that night anyway. No trace of her. No trace of the roommates. Nothing. Sometimes before I sleep, I think about the ones still there. Trapped. Forced to act happy. And I wonder if she moved on to someone else. Maybe someone who wasn't smart enough to leave. Someone who thinks he's just lucky that a rich, pretty girl picked him. I honestly thought Hinge was supposed to be the normal dating app, at least compared to the others. The app where people pretend they love hiking and plants. I wasn't even expecting anything interesting when I matched with this guy. His profile was basic. Plain hoodie selfies, a dog, captions like gym and food. Nothing special. Maybe that's why I said yes. Sometimes boring feels safe. He suggested we go to this quiet cafe on a side street near town. Somewhere I'd never been before, but looked decent on maps. I got there first and waited outside because I didn't want to be that person awkwardly sitting alone inside. He walked up a few minutes later, smiling like everything was cool. He wasn't weird looking or anything. Average. Normal. That's kinda important here. We went inside and ordered. He paid before I could even grab my card, which made me think maybe he's just one of those nice guys. But right after paying, he checked his smartwatch. Real quick glance, then pocketed his hands. I thought nothing of it. We sat down and talked, or I talked. He kept checking that watch like every 30 seconds, tapping the screen, tilting his wrist. Each time his eyes flicked down, he'd smirk for a second like someone texted him something he liked. I asked if he was waiting on something important. He laughed and said no, it's just a habit. But then he did it again, literally 3 seconds later. I tried to ignore it. I asked about his dog. He said the dog's name was Milo. Then, buzzed, he looks at the watch again. Literally mid-sentence. He didn't even hide it. I laughed awkwardly, like, okay, whatever, maybe he's addicted to tech. But I kept noticing that every time he tapped his wrist, he would look up at me with this weird expectation, like he wanted me to do something specific. After a while, the watch buzzed again and his eyes lit up. like really bright. He asked if I like spicy food. I said, yeah, kind of. Then he suddenly called the waiter over and asked for the hottest thing they had. I didn't ask for that. He didn't ask what I even wanted. I tried to tell the waiter no, but the guy insisted, saying I'd love it. The waiter looked annoyed, like he'd seen this kind of garbage before. The guy tapped his watch again. That smirk came back. I asked why he keeps doing that. He shrugged and said he likes tracking his health stuff. But I swear nothing about what he was doing looked health-related. Plus, he wasn't even working out or anything, just sitting there staring at me like I was supposed to entertain him. Then he suddenly asked me to stand up and spin, like out of nowhere. I said no because that was random and weird. He looked annoyed and checked the watch again, shaking his head like he just lost something. I asked him what his problem was. He acted like I overreacted and told me to relax. The spicy food came. He pushed it toward me and just watched, not eating his own food, just staring. I took a tiny bite because I didn't want to make a scene. Next thing I know, it's burning my entire mouth and I feel like I'm gonna cry. He checked the watch again. Huge smile, like he won something. I pushed the plate away and told him he was acting strange. He leaned in and said something like people love it when you try the spicy stuff. I thought he meant internet people. I said, what do you mean? He changed the subject like he didn't say anything. My mouth felt like it was literally on fire, so I went to the bathroom. I splashed water on my face and sat there for a second trying to get myself together. I thought about leaving, but I didn't want to cause drama. I mean, it's just a dumb date, right? He's weird, but probably harmless. That's what I told myself anyway. When I walked back out, he was on his watch again, whispering, like talking into it quietly. When he saw me coming, he sat straight and pretended nothing was happening. I was done, though. I said I wasn't feeling well and might head home early. He looked panicked for the first time. He checked the watch again, stared at it like he was waiting for permission. Then, out of nowhere, he asked me to kiss him before I left. I said absolutely not. He looked genuinely upset. He kept staring at his watch like begging it to give him a different result. I stood up. I grabbed my bag, and before I could take a step, I heard sirens outside. Loud ones, like the kind when police mean business. The cab door flew open and officers rushed in, all pointing directly at him, not even glancing at anyone else. They told him not to move. He froze instantly, like he'd been caught doing exactly what he knew he shouldn't. One officer grabbed his wrist and yanked the smartwatch off. Another cuffed him right there on the floor. He didn't even fight back. He just kept repeating that he didn't do anything serious. The whole cafe was silent. The officers asked if I was okay. I said yeah, I guess, even though I was shaking. They said I was lucky someone reported the stream. I didn't understand what they meant, so one of them explained. He had been live streaming the entire date from that watch. People online were betting money on what I'd do next, how far the date would go, what reactions I'd have, even whether I'd cry or not from the spicy food. Everything he asked me to do was for them, including the kiss. He was basically some kind of live entertainment puppet master for creeps watching from their phones. They said this wasn't his first time either. He'd done this with multiple girls. The officer asked if I rode here with him. I said no. He nodded and said good. He said some of the bets earlier were about whether he could get me to go somewhere private. All these tiny details suddenly clicked in my head at once. That's why he brought me to an out-of-the-way caf. That's why he suggested we go to his place afterward. The bets were escalating. The viewers were probably pushing him, paying for more risks. He got taken out the door while I just sat there shaking, staring at the stupid watch they had bagged as evidence. My food was still sitting in front of me, untouched except for that one bite that felt like fire. The waiter came over later and offered me water on the house. He said he had a bad feeling since the guy kept glancing at his wrist every few seconds. I thanked him and paid for my part because I just wanted to leave fast. When I got outside, the street looked unreal. Lights flashing, cops talking, the guy sitting in a police car still trying to explain himself. Like he didn't understand why everyone was so angry. Like he thought it was harmless fun. Like I wasn't a real person sitting right in front of him while strangers watched my reactions for entertainment. I blocked him the second I got home. I deleted Hinge for a while too. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind, wondering what would have happened if I had stayed longer, or if I had walked with him somewhere quieter, all because some random people wanted to bet money on someone else's date.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far, And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I matched with her pretty randomly. Nothing wild drew me in. She looked like someone who actually went outside and did things, while I usually just sit in my room pretending I have plans. She messaged first, which already made me feel kind of good. She asked if I'm into surprises. I joked back like, yeah, sure, unless it's a tax bill or something. She said she got the best surprise plan for our first date and that she couldn't wait to show me. I thought she meant like a food spot or some cool view. Not what actually happened. She showed up in this dark jacket, hair tied back, acting confident like she already knew me. We walked through the city, and everything felt normal at first. She kept talking about how she likes to make memories that nobody forgets, which sounded cute until I learned she wasn't lying. We reached this building I'd never seen before. Tall, kind of fancy, but not like the richest thing ever. She said the surprise was at the top. I thought maybe it was a rooftop restaurant or a view of the skyline. She pressed the elevator button, and the moment the doors shut, she looked at me like she was making sure I wouldn't chicken out. I tried making jokes to keep things calm, but she just kept staring up at the numbers as they climbed. Once we got to the roof level, the doors opened into this dark hallway. Not a cool rooftop entrance, more like a storage area that led outside. She grabbed my wrist gently and told me not to freak out. That alone made me want to run. I laughed like it was supposed to be funny, but deep down I was curious and too stupid to go home. We walked out through a metal door and stepped onto the actual rooftop. The air was cold and the wind was loud. I expected to see maybe a few chairs or fairy lights or something normal. Instead, there were like 10 people standing in a half circle, all wearing the same kind of mask, plain white, no designs, no holes except for the eyes and mouth. They weren't talking, just watching. I stopped walking because any normal person would. She kept pulling me forward like nothing was wrong. I asked her who they were. She didn't answer. She just smiled, but not the excited first date kind of smile. It was like she was finally revealing some big secret. One of the masked people stepped forward. They reached into their coat and pulled out a knife. Not a tiny pocket thing. A long one, shiny even in the dark. They handed it to her like it was a gift. She took it without hesitating. Then the person said, kind of loud but still calm, that tonight was her initiation night. Everyone else nodded slowly like they were in some creepy ritual club. My chest got tight instantly. I tried stepping back, but someone behind me blocked the way. I turned around and there was another masked person I didn't even notice before. The whole group started closing the gap, not fast, just enough that I knew running would be pointless unless I fought like a superhero, which I definitely am not. I asked her what was going on and she said it so casually that I wanted to scream. She said I was a surprise. She said she needed a real target to prove she was committed. She said I was perfect because nobody would suspect me missing for a while, since I told her earlier that I don't get out much and barely anyone checks in on me at night. I honestly couldn't believe she paid attention to that. I told her she didn't have to do this. She looked down at the knife and her hand shook a little. I thought maybe she would change her mind, but the masked group started chanting softly. Not actual words, just some low humming like they were hyping her up. Then, out of nowhere, this buzzing sound came from above us. I looked up and saw drones. Not one or two. Loads. Red lights blinking, cameras pointed straight at me. That's when it hit me that this wasn't just some messed up private cult thing. They were recording everything, like a show. Like someone somewhere was watching and maybe sending instructions. I instantly thought about running again. Maybe if I ran to the edge and took the stairs down, I could make it. But two people moved in front of that exit like they knew I'd try. She stepped a little closer to me. The knife was shaking more now, but she wasn't dropping it. She kept looking back at the group like she was waiting for their reaction, like she was scared of them more than she was about hurting me. I could see her breathing heavy, trying to work up the guts to do what they wanted. I told her she didn't really know me. She didn't say anything for a bit, just stared at my face like she was trying to decide if I should be worth saving. Then someone in the group shouted that she had to hurry, that the viewers don't like waiting. The viewers. Not members. Viewers. That word alone messed with my head. These weren't just strangers on a roof. They were part of something way bigger. Something that expected entertainment. I backed up until my heels hit the edge of the roof. I didn't want to show fear, but I felt like my body was totally giving me away. The drones moved in closer, following every tiny move I made. She kept inching forward, trying to hide the fact that she was shaking. I noticed something though. Every time she hesitated, the group's grip on their weird vibe got stronger. They were whispering, yelling sometimes, like they wanted her to just do it already. I tried one more time to get through to her. I said maybe she wasn't the type to hurt someone. Maybe she only joined this group because she wanted to belong somewhere. Maybe they lied to her. I sounded pathetic, but I didn't care. Anything to make her stop. She paused again. 1 second. 2 seconds. The longest seconds of my entire life. Then she swung the knife toward me. Not fast. Not enough to stab. More like she lost control of her arm. The blade just scraped past my hoodie and didn't touch skin. The group gasped like a bunch of fans watching their team almost score. She looked horrified that she even tried. Someone behind her grabbed her shoulders and screamed for her to finish it. Right then I noticed something. The door we came through wasn't fully shut. It was open just a bit. If I pushed hard enough, maybe I could get through before they grabbed me. So I didn't think. I just ran. I shoved the masked person who was closest to that door and sprinted full speed. I heard footsteps behind me. I heard yelling. The drones followed. The wind felt like it was tackling me every step, but I didn't stop. I jumped through the door and slammed it behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't breathe until I was inside the building, sprinting down the stairs like my life depended on it, because it did. I didn't stop until I reached the street outside. I kept running, blocks and blocks, until my lungs hurt. I didn't call the police right away because I didn't even know what to say without sounding insane. I finally told them everything later that night. They said they'd investigate the building, but the whole time I was explaining, the officer looked like he'd heard worse. She blocked me on Hinge. Her whole profile gone. The building? Apparently it has no residents listed for the top floors. No record of any event on the roof. Nothing, like it all disappeared. But I know what I saw. I know the drone saw me too. I always thought meeting someone on Hinge would be like awkward laughs, maybe a weird hug at the end, then deciding if you wanted to see them again. Nothing like what actually happened. If I ever tell this story out loud, people think I'm exaggerating. Like I'm trying to make a normal date seem wild. But I wish it was just a normal night. I wish I never matched him at all. He seemed like the quiet type. Simple photos, nothing fancy, a dog in one picture, some pasta he cooked in another. He looked harmless, which sounds stupid to even say now. I liked that he looked like he stayed home a lot. He looked like he wouldn't break my heart or make me feel like an idiot. His messages were polite, always calling me cool and saying he couldn't believe I swiped right on him. That should have been cute. Now it just feels gross. He invited me over for dinner at his place. Normally I'd say no to that on a first date, but he kept saying he'd cook something special. He talked about how he loved his home and how he put so much heart into decorating it. He said I'd feel comfortable there. I imagined a normal house, a bit messy maybe, posters or photos of places he's been. Nothing dangerous. I kept telling myself that every part of this was fine. His neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people have nice cars but complain about the tiniest noise. His house looked normal from the outside. White paint, a little porch with a plant that was dying. I knocked and he opened the door instantly, like he had been watching through the window waiting to impress me. He smiled a big smile and welcomed me inside. It smelled like garlic and something cooking. But the second I stepped in, my stomach dropped even before my brain understood why. Framed photos covered every wall. Not family pictures. Not him with friends. Just women. Different ages, different backgrounds, all smiling in random locations. Parks, cafes, outside buildings. Pictures that looked like they were taken without the people knowing. He told me he was proud of his decorations. He said every picture had a story. He walked me through the hallway pointing at the frames, telling me things he assumed about the women, like guesses about their lives. He laughed about how he thought one girl probably liked pink fluffy slivers. Then he pointed to another and said he used to see her take the bus every morning. The way he talked made it sound like he knew them personally, but also like they never knew him. I asked if he ever told them he took their pictures. He just laughed like I said something silly. He said pictures are memories and sometimes people don't know they're making memories with you. That line still sticks in my head like a bad song. We walked into his living room and it was worse than the hallway. Bigger frames. Some pictures were close-ups of women's faces. Too close, like he stood right in front of them when taking the photo. One picture made my knees weak. It was a girl I recognized. Not personally, but from a missing poster that got shared everywhere online. She'd been gone for over 2 weeks. She looked younger in this picture. She was smiling like she had no idea someone was watching. My heart started racing. I tried to stay calm because I didn't want him to notice. He told me to sit while he finished the food. He seemed so excited about dinner. I sat on the far end of the couch so I could see the front door. I kept trying to remind myself that maybe I was overthinking. Maybe he had asked for a picture. Maybe he was just a collector of photography. But deep down I knew none of that made sense. These pictures weren't artistic. They were creepy, stolen, like trophies. He came back carrying a plate of pasta dripping with sauce. He put it in front of me and sat way too close. I couldn't even pretend to eat. I told him I wasn't hungry yet and asked why he kept those pictures. He said he hated when women walked out of his life without leaving anything behind. He said pictures helped keep him close. He whispered that part like he hoped I'd find it romantic. My chest felt tight. I kept staring at the door, wondering if I could run before he grabbed me. He noticed my eyes drifting and suddenly asked what I was looking at. I said nothing. He leaned closer, staring right into my face, and said I seemed nervous. He asked if I didn't like his home. He asked if I wanted to go look at more pictures upstairs. I forced a smile, but inside I was shaking. I told him maybe after we ate. Then I pretended I needed to use the bathroom so I could text my friend that I was uncomfortable. I stood up slowly, trying to not look scared, and then out of nowhere there was a knock on the door. He froze, like completely froze. The knock came again. A voice yelled that they were the police and they needed to talk to him. His whole expression changed, like his real face finally showed up. He glared at the door, then looked at me like I had something to do with it. I said nothing. I couldn't move. The police shouted again, saying it was a welfare check. He stood up tense and told me not to say a word. He walked to the door and opened it only a bit. The officers pushed inside right away. They asked who else lived here. They saw me and immediately asked if I was okay. I nodded, trying not to cry. They said they got a call about suspicious behavior and a woman possibly being held somewhere. They asked to search the house. He started denying everything, saying they needed a warrant, saying they were ruining his date. But the officers didn't back off. One officer noticed some pictures and told the others to look around. I sat still, trying not to throw up. He started yelling that he didn't do anything wrong and that the girls in the pictures were beautiful memories. The officers told him to sit down and stop moving. He kept saying they were overreacting. One officer asked him when he last saw the girl in the missing poster. He didn't answer. He just stared at the wall. They found something upstairs. I don't know what. I only heard one officer call for backup. I didn't want to go see. I didn't want to know who or what was there. They took him outside in cuffs. He kept yelling my name like we had some connection, like I was going to defend him. I couldn't even look at him. An officer walked me to my car and told me I needed to answer some questions later. They took my number and told me I was lucky someone filed a report on him earlier. Lucky. That word stuck with me. I sat in my car for a long time before I drove home. I didn't even turn the radio on. I just stared at the road wishing I stayed home that night. When I got back, I checked online. The missing girl's posts looked different now. She didn't look like a random face anymore. She was part of the nightmare I almost didn't escape. I kept thinking about the other pictures in his house. All those women smiling with no clue someone treated them like collectibles, like they were already ghosts in his mind. I deleted Hinge, for real this time. Not because I think apps are bad, but because sometimes the worst people look the most normal. Sometimes someone smiles and asks you to dinner, and the whole time they're deciding where your picture will hang on their wall. I always thought I was pretty decent at spotting weird behavior. Like if someone said something off, I'd notice it and leave before things got ugly. But I swear Hinge has a way of making you ignore your own brain. You just want the date to be good. You want the person to be normal. So you convince yourself that everything is fine. That's exactly how I ended up in this story. Her profile wasn't anything crazy. She had pictures with random backgrounds, nothing flexing money or fancy trips. Just normal selfies and a picture of a black duffel bag next to her foot. I thought that was odd, but I figured she was one of those people who post random objects because they think it's artsy. She messaged first and asked what my favorite food was. Smooth start, I guess. We met at a small cafe near her place. She showed up with that same black duffel bag from the picture. It looked heavy. like gym bag heavy, but she didn't look like someone who carried gym equipment around. She kept it right next to her feet the entire time. The strap wrapped twice around her wrist. I joked about it, like, wow, that must have your whole life inside it. She smiled but didn't laugh. She said she didn't go anywhere without it. I asked what was inside, thinking she'd say laptop or clothes. She just said important things. Her eyes didn't match the smile when she said that. The bag never left her side. Not once. Our conversation was fine at first. She asked a lot of questions. Too many maybe. She asked who I lived with, who would notice if I was gone for a night, stuff that I assumed was just curiosity. I read those questions later in my head, and they sounded completely different. But in the moment, I liked the attention. I thought she was genuinely interested. After we finished our drinks, she asked if I wanted to see her flat. She said she had a cool gaming setup and we could hang out there. I wasn't planning to go to someone's home on the first date, but she said she lived just 2 streets away, so I convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. Plus, I was dumb and thought maybe this would be one of those Hinge success stories you see on TikTok. We started walking, and the whole time she kept adjusting the duffel bag, but she was making sure nothing inside moved around too much. I asked again what was in it, and she just repeated important things. No explanation. No detail. The tone made me drop the question completely. Her building looked normal from the outside. Not super fancy, but nice enough. She lived on the 4th floor. The second we got inside her flat, she locked the door behind us. Not just the door lock. She slid a deadbolt and another weird lock near the bottom. Like she practiced doing it fast. That made a little alarm go off in my head, but I didn't want to seem rude or act like I was scared. Her living room was small, kind of messy but not disgusting. The bag stayed in her hand until she placed it gently next to the couch like she was putting down something fragile. We sat and talked for a while. Every now and then she glanced at the bag, like she was checking if it was still there. It was never more than 1 foot away from her. After a bit, I went to grab a glass of water in the kitchen because my throat was dry. The kitchen was small too, but clean. While I was filling my glass at the sink, I heard a noise, like a soft bump or thud. I thought maybe something fell off the counter. When I turned around, she was already holding the duffel bag again, staring at me, like she thought I was going to try and open it. That stare alone made my stomach twist. I said I heard something. She said the pipes in this building make weird sounds all the time. She spoke fast, like she wanted me to stop thinking about it. I sat back down and tried to keep the vibe normal, but that noise didn't sound like pipes. It sounded like something hitting the inside of a bag. 5 minutes later, it happened again, louder this time. The bag actually moved, like something inside kicked or pushed against it. I jumped. She pressed her hand on top of it and said sometimes the zipper gets stuck and the bag pops, which was the dumbest excuse ever. I knew that she knew that, but she said it anyway like I should just accept it. I stood up and told her I should probably head home. I tried to smile so she wouldn't think I was freaking out. She stood up at the same time and moved right in front of the door, her body blocking it. She was way closer than before. Her smile was gone. She asked why I wanted to leave so quickly. She said we were having a good time. She said no one leaves before she says the date is over. My heart was pounding. I told her I had an early morning. She said she didn't want me to go yet. Then the bag shook again. Not a tiny movement this time. A full-on shake like something alive was trapped inside. She didn't even look down that time. She just stared at me, waiting, daring me to say something. I couldn't hide it anymore. I asked what was in the bag. She whispered that I asked too many questions. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were crazy wide. I thought about pushing past her. I thought about just running. But she looked like she would fight me for real. She reached behind her and adjusted one of the door locks without breaking eye contact. That made me panic harder. Then someone knocked, loud, like their fist would break the door down. She froze. The knock came again, and a man shouted that he was a police officer and they needed to talk to the resident immediately. She looked terrified, not annoyed, terrified. The police said it was regarding a missing child reported earlier that day. My spine felt like ice. She backed up from the door slowly. I didn't wait for permission. I yelled that I was inside. The officers told me to step away from the door. I tried, but the space was tiny. I could barely move. She grabbed the bag like she was planning to make a run for it through the window or something. But the police kept knocking and finally forced the door open. The second they came in, she dropped the bag and tried to push past them. They grabbed her and pinned her to the ground, yelling for her to stop struggling. The bag kept shaking. One of the officers opened it with a knife, and inside was a little boy. Tiny, scared, taped mouth, wrists tied, crying silently like he had been doing it for hours. They lifted him out and held him close. The officer asked me if she had hurt me. I said no, but I could barely speak. My whole body was shaking. They took her away. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the kid. She just stared straight ahead like none of it mattered anymore. One officer stayed with me to make sure I was okay. He said the child was kidnapped from a playground earlier. They had been tracking a signal from a device in his jacket, and that led them to her building. He said I was lucky. Lucky. That word keeps coming up in these stories, like I almost joined the photos or the sand or the rooftop show. They let me go home after asking some questions. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop hearing the sound of that bag moving. I kept thinking about how if the police arrived 10 minutes later, I might have been the next thing she stuffed inside something. I deleted Hinge completely now, not just the app from my phone, the account too. I used to think dating was supposed to be fun. Now I just think about how people hide their darkest parts behind a couple nice pictures and a line about loving sushi. I hate when people overuse the phrase trust your gut, like everyone is supposed to magically sense danger before it gets to them. But if I'm being real, my gut did try. I just ignored it because I didn't want to be dramatic. I wanted this Hinge date to be normal, casual, something to tell my friends about later in a funny voice. Instead, I'm talking about it like I barely dodged something terrifying. He matched with me on a Sunday afternoon. His profile looked calm and basic. Pictures of him smiling by the lake, holding a coffee cup, maybe one of him sitting on a sofa. He didn't look rich or too polished. He seemed normal in a good way. His prompt answers were cheesy but cute, and he called me pretty without sounding gross. I thought that alone was rare enough to give him a chance. The first weird thing he said came about 5 minutes in. He messaged that I looked familiar, like he'd seen me before. I figured he meant social media, or maybe I looked like someone from Netflix that people always compare me to. I joked back like, hopefully it's someone pretty. He replied maybe prettier. I didn't think anything of it. You can't judge someone for remembering a face, right? We decided to meet after work one evening. He said he knew a chill tea place near town where we could talk without loud music or crowds. I liked that. I liked that he wanted to actually talk. When I got there, he smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life. He kept saying again that he swore he knew me from somewhere. Every time he stared too long, I got this tiny pinch of doubt in my chest, but I brushed it off because the date actually seemed to be going okay. He asked a lot of questions. Normal ones, but with a weird pattern. Not like what movies do you like or what food do you hate. More like what time I usually finish work, how often I go out on weekdays, where exactly I worked inside the shopping center I mentioned. He listened too closely when I talked about my job. He repeated things back to me like he was memorizing details. I didn't notice how uncomfortable that was until later. The tea place closed earlier than I expected. He offered to walk me back through town so I wouldn't be alone. We talked a little more, and again he dropped that line about recognizing me. I finally asked where from then. He didn't answer directly. He said maybe he'd tell me next time when he was more sure. That weirded me out a bit, like what do you mean next time, dude? We said goodbye near the station. He hugged me too long, holding his hand still instead of patting my back like normal hugs. I went home and tried to convince myself nothing was off. He texted me goodnight 3 times. Not really flirty. More like making sure I replied. The next day at work, around lunchtime, I stepped outside for fresh air. Across the street, near the bus stop, I saw him. Same jacket. Same stance. Just standing there. I stared, trying to figure out if I was imagining it. He didn't look over. Not once. But he was definitely facing my work building. I told myself he was waiting for a bus. I went back inside before my brain could turn it into something bigger. The day after, he messaged asking how work was going. I said it was fine. He said he hoped I wasn't too stressed dealing with the lunchtime rush. I hadn't told him what time my break was. He also mentioned the color of the jacket I wore that day because he said it suited me. I literally stopped breathing for a second when I read that. I tried to give him a chance to explain. I said, did you walk by earlier? He replied with a smiling emoji and said maybe it was just on his mind. He said lots of people wear brown jackets, except I knew he was lying. You can tell when a lie tries to sound casual. That night, he called me by a nickname I never told him. A name only people at work use. I asked how he knew it. He dodged the question again. Said he must have guessed. I told him I didn't like guessing games and I didn't like feeling watched. He sent a voice note apologizing. His voice sounded shaky. He kept saying he cared too much and didn't want to mess things up. I muted him and tried to sleep, but my chest would not calm down. The next day I felt paranoid stepping into work. I kept glancing at the doors, checking reflections in windows. I tried to stay busy and not think about him. But around mid-afternoon, a coworker nudged me and asked if I knew the guy standing behind the pillar near the entrance. I turned, and there he was again, staring directly through the glass, this time not pretending. He waved when he saw me look. A slow wave like he was proud I caught him. I panicked and told my manager. She didn't treat it like drama. She walked up to the front herself and stared him down. He didn't run or hide. He just stepped closer like he was coming inside. That's when security showed up. They moved fast. One guard stood between him and the doorway. Another approached him and asked if he needed help or if he was waiting for someone. He kept repeating that he was with me, that we were dating, that I wanted him there. The guard looked at me through the window and I shook my head so hard I nearly got dizzy. His whole expression changed, like he broke, like something snapped and the real version of him came out. He started yelling that he knew me long before Hinge. He said he had been seeing me every day. He listed the exact times that usually start my shift. He knew what time I step outside for air. He said he memorized my smile before I ever read his profile. My coworkers pulled me further back into the store. I was shaking and couldn't stop staring at his face. He didn't look angry. He looked betrayed, like I was the one stalking him. The security guards pinned him against the wall when he tried to push through. He yelled that someone like me shouldn't ignore someone who cared so much. Police got called. They took him outside while he kept turning his head every couple of seconds trying to find me. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they weren't mine. One officer later told me that he had been spotted around the shopping center multiple times in the last month and security had been keeping notes on his behavior. They just didn't know who he was targeting until now. They told me he didn't have a weapon on him, but he had photos on his phone, on a small camera in his pocket. Multiple pictures of me arriving to work, leaving work, laughing with coworkers, sitting outside on breaks, all taken from a distance, all without me knowing. The officer said I did the right thing saying something when I felt scared. I didn't feel right. I felt like I had been living my life while someone else turned it into a show without asking. He wasn't allowed near the shopping center anymore. I blocked him on everything. I even changed my route to work. It still took weeks before I stopped glancing over my shoulder every few steps. People act like recognition is flattering, like when someone says they've seen you before, it should make you feel special. But now all I think is maybe special just means someone has been watching too closely. Maybe special means danger pretending to be attention. I matched her on Hinge during a boring night when I had nothing better to do than scroll and hope someone interesting liked me back. She did. And that alone gave me a little confidence boost. Her profile said she worked in fashion and loved late night walks, and she had those selfies that make you think she's too cool to ever notice a guy like me. But she messaged first and kept calling me cute in this kind of playful way that makes you think maybe this app isn't a complete waste of time. We talked for a few days and everything was fine until she randomly mentioned her ex. She didn't say it like a fun story. She said it like a warning. She told me he was obsessed with her and couldn't let go. She said he had been following her, showing up near places she visited. She said she was scared he might show up when we go out. I tried to play it cool and said I didn't mind protecting her if he did. She replied with a heart emoji, and that made me feel like some kind of hero. Yeah, I know, dumb. We planned to meet in the city for a walk and maybe grab food after. When she arrived, she kept looking behind her shoulder like she expected someone to jump out from the shadows. She clutched her phone tight and stuck close to me right away. She was wearing this long black coat and sunglasses, even though it was nighttime. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was trying to stay hidden. She said her ex could be anywhere. For the first 30 minutes, I was just trying to make her laugh and forget the whole situation. She did laugh a bit, but then she'd instantly snap back into scanning the crowd. Her paranoia was contagious. Every time someone walked near us, she'd tense up and stare until they passed. I started getting paranoid too, even though I didn't know what her ex looked like. After a while, she grabbed my arm and said we needed to keep moving so he wouldn't catch up. She said it like she knew for sure he was coming. She pointed at random cars and whispered that he could be inside. She said he's dangerous and wouldn't stop until he had her back. I kept trying to tell myself she was just traumatized from a bad relationship or something like that. But the more she talked, the weirder the story got. She said he worked with people who can make you vanish. She kept glancing at strangers like she recognized them. We went into a small late-night spot to get drinks. I tried to get her to relax, but she barely touched her soda. She sat with her back against the wall, eyes glued to the door. The place was quiet. Just a couple sitting near the front and two guys chatting at a table. Nothing scary, but she kept breathing like she just finished running. When I excused myself to go to the bathroom, she tried to stop me. She said she didn't want to be alone even for a minute. When I told her I really needed to go, she scanned the room again and nodded but said to be quick. She said if her ex walked in, she'd scream and run out. That made me nervous, but I still went. When I got back, she was gone from the table. My heart dropped so fast I almost tripped. I looked around and saw her standing near the exit talking to one of the guys who had been sitting at the front earlier. He was tall, well-dressed, and wearing a small earpiece in his ear. I didn't think anything about that until I noticed the second guy at the table had one too. It looked like they were trying to calm her down. I walked closer and heard her saying that I left her, that she thought I was one of them too. One of the men turned to me and asked if I was with her. I said yes and tried to explain she was just stressed about her ex possibly following us. The man gave me this look that wasn't casual at all, like he was analyzing me, like he already knew exactly who she was. The girl tugged on my sleeve and whispered that we should leave before they found out. I said who found out. She said the ones hunting me, like she was being tracked by a secret organization or something. The two men took a step closer to her. They were calm but firm. They told her to stop running. She panicked and grabbed my arm to pull me away. I didn't know what to do. My brain was just bouncing between maybe she's telling the truth and maybe she's completely out of her mind. The men told her she needed to come with them now. She shouted that they were working for her ex and she wasn't going anywhere. She tried pulling me toward the exit, but the men followed. Outside, it all went downhill fast. The city was noisy, but the tension made everything feel silent. She kept saying they weren't cops. She kept saying they were here for her. She was shaking and holding on to me like I was her last choice for safety. The men spoke into their earpieces. Seconds later, a black car pulled up to the curb. That's when I finally heard the word clearly. One of the men said her last name and told her she was being arrested. He explained that she needed to stop running and that nobody was here to hurt her. He said they had evidence. He said this was bigger than she thought. She kept screaming it was lies. She yelled that her ex made all of it up. She sounded unhinged now, not scared. The men tried to guide her into the car, but she broke free and ran into the street. Traffic stopped. She sprinted between cars like she had been preparing for this. More undercover guys showed up from nowhere. They surrounded her until she had nowhere to go. One finally grabbed her and cuffed her hands. She kept yelling for me to help her like I owed her something. She swore she was innocent. One officer came up to me and asked if I was hurt or if she threatened me. I said no. I said I didn't know what was happening. He told me she wasn't being hunted by an ex. She was the one being punted. She was wanted for kidnapping a young girl from a family she used to work for. He said she had been moving around the city trying to avoid getting caught and that she used strangers as shields so she wouldn't be alone. She liked picking people who looked easy to manipulate. I watched them put her in the car. She stared back at me like I betrayed her just by existing. Like if I didn't text her back, none of this would have happened. I just stood there feeling totally stupid for thinking I was her protector when she was the one everyone needed protecting from. The officer told me I was lucky she didn't drag me into anything worse. All these stories end with someone saying I was lucky, but I don't feel lucky. I feel like I stepped right into someone else's nightmare and barely slipped out before the door locked behind me. She texted me once after that night, just one word before the number got blocked automatically by whatever system is watching her now. The message said soon. I deleted Hinge an hour later. I should have stayed home. That's literally the first thought that hits me every time I think about this night. I wasn't even in the mood to meet someone from Hinge, but he kept messaging and he seemed genuinely excited to see me. He said he wanted to show me a part of town with the best night views. Said it would be romantic, quiet, and all that. I imagined us parked somewhere looking at city lights, playing some soft music, talking about dumb things until we got tired. That's what I thought I signed up for. He picked me up outside my place. His car was clean, shiny, and he had one of those polite smiles that make you think he's a safe guy. He opened the passenger door for me and even complimented my hoodie. It all felt normal. He smelled like expensive forest soap or something. He told me to get comfortable and that he'd take care of the rest. We started driving and he kept saying he was happy I came out. He talked about how he loves driving late at night because the roads calm him down. I thought that was kind of cute. We joked about how Hinge dates usually end up awkward or dead silent. And honestly, he was easy to talk to. It felt like maybe I actually got lucky this time. The radio was low. The windows slightly cracked. Everything felt calm. But then I heard this faint noise, like a tap from behind us. I didn't react because I thought maybe something in the trunk slid around. He didn't seem to notice. We kept talking about music and how he used to go on long drives to clear his head. The noise came again, this time louder. A dull thud, like someone hitting metal from the inside. I stopped mid-sentence. He pretended he didn't hear it. I asked if something was in the trunk. He laughed way too fast and said it was probably a loose tool or something. I tried to laugh too, but my voice cracked a little. The vibe shifted so fast I could feel my heart start working overtime. Another hit, louder, like a fist this time. Then a scream. Not a long horror movie scream. Just one loud yell that cut off instantly. My blood turned cold. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said sometimes cars make strange noises. Like he was trying to hypnotize reality into changing. The scream happened again, clearer. Definitely a man's voice. Definitely someone trapped. I asked him to pull over right now. He didn't. He kept driving, eyes stuck on the road. He said something like I shouldn't ruin the night with silly imagination. Silly imagination. Meanwhile, someone was literally ranging for life behind us. I unbuckled my seatbelt slowly. I didn't know what I was going to do. Jump out while moving? Grab the wheel? I just knew I wasn't staying still. I asked him again, louder this time, to stop the car. He slammed the lock shut. Every door clicked. He stared at me with this cold, dead expression, like I had stopped being a person and became a problem he needed to deal with. The banging kept going, harder now, panicked. The voice was cracking from screaming so much. I could hear real fear coming from the trunk. I wanted to throw up. I tried grabbing the door handle even though it was locked. He told me not to touch anything and that he'd explain everything once we got there. That sentence made everything worse. What does that even mean? Where it is there? I didn't wait to find out. I reached for his phone in the cup holder, hoping I could call someone, but he snatched it away fast. He kept telling me to calm down. Calm down. Like that would fix the kidnapped person literally behind us. We were on a quieter road now with barely any cars. My brain was screaming to do something. Anything. The man in the trunk yelled again, begging, saying help. The car shook a bit from him, slamming his body against the metal. I asked who he was. The driver said not to worry about it. That soon it wouldn't matter. I tried to think fast. The only thing I could do was get out somehow. The car slowed for a turn, so I pushed the lock button trying to unlock the door. He grabbed my wrist hard and told me to behave. I yanked away and shouted for help even though no one was around. That's when I saw flashing lights up ahead. A patrol car. Parked on the side of the road, an officer writing something on a clipboard. Everything happened so fast in my head. I waited until we were close enough, and then I grabbed the door handle again with all my strength. The lock finally clicked open. I pushed the door and tried to leap out while shouting for help. He grabbed the back of my hoodie and tried to pull me back inside. I almost fell under the tires. I screamed louder, and that's when the officer noticed. The patrol car lights came on instantly. Siren blipped once. The officer rushed over, hand already on his holster, yelling for us to stop the vehicle. The guy let go of me and slammed the gas for a second like he might try to run, but the cop drew his weapon and shouted again. The guy froze. He finally stopped the car. The officer opened my door and helped me out. I was shaking so bad I could barely stand. He asked if I was hurt. I pointed at the trunk over and over because I couldn't form words. The driver kept saying it was a misunderstanding, that I was overreacting, that he could explain. The officer radioed in backup and kept the guy where he could see him. He opened the trunk carefully. Inside was a man tied up, duct tape on his face, clothes ripped, eyes huge and wild. He was crying so hard it didn't sound like crying anymore. Just pure terror coming out of his throat. The officer cut the tape loose and helped him out gently. The man collapsed, sobbing and thanking everyone. He said he was taken earlier that day. He didn't know where they were going. He thought he was going to die. I felt I was going to die too if I hadn't tried to run. Backup arrived. They cuffed the Hinge guy and put him in the back of a patrol car while he kept mumbling excuses. Like he didn't just get caught with a living person tied up in his trunk. The officer told me I saved someone's life by fighting back. I felt sick. Not heroic. Sick. Because if that patrol car wasn't there, if I had just trusted him a little bit longer, I might have ended up next to that terrified man in the dark. They asked me questions for a long time. They said I did the smart thing getting attention. I sat on the edge of the road wrapped in a blanket they gave me, staring at nothing. The night didn't feel romantic anymore, just cold and ugly. They dropped me home. I deleted Hinge as soon as I walked inside. I locked every door twice. I kept imagining the trunk banging again, like the sound would follow me forever. Everyone always tells you to be careful with strangers, but dating apps make you forget that sometimes strangers smile too nicely. Sometimes strangers hold doors open. Sometimes strangers say they know the best views in town. And sometimes strangers have someone screaming behind you the entire time. I keep thinking about how close I came to staying longer. Like if dessert had come out faster, or if I hadn't gone to the bathroom when I did, I might have sat there smiling while a bunch of strangers turned me into a criminal online. It's crazy how a Hinge match can flip your whole night into something you tell detectives later. She was the one who asked me out. She said she liked that I looked honest. I thought that was funny because I don't think I looked like anything special. She invited me to what she called a small dinner gathering with close friends. She said it would be more fun than a boring one-on-one date. I agreed because it sounded different and less awkward. I had no idea I was walking into something so messed up. Her place was on the edge of the city. Not too fancy, but kind of stylish. Warm lights, candles, music playing low. When she opened the door, she looked totally normal. Like girl next door normal. She hugged me and said I was just in time. She acted excited that I came, which made me relax a bit. I followed her to the dining area and saw 4 other people already sitting around the table. They all turned to look at me at the exact same time. That was the first weird moment. Like they rehearsed it. They smiled, but the smiles felt late. Forced. She introduced them quickly, but the names didn't stick because no one actually greeted me. They just nodded and kept staring. The table was filled with plates of food. Pasta, roast chicken salad. Everything looked good. She told me to sit next to her. I did. At first, everyone was silent in that awkward way. Then one of them said a sentence I didn't understand at all. Something like the clouds are late today. Another person replied the door will open when the keys arrive. They all nodded like that made sense. Then someone else said check the water pressure. Another person said 32 for certain. I thought it was some inside joke I wasn't in on. I laughed a little because I didn't know what else to do. They didn't laugh back. They just stared at me like I was the only one who didn't get it. I whispered to her, asking what that was about. She smiled and whispered back that they talk in code sometimes for fun. I pretended that didn't freak me out. While we ate, they kept doing it. Every normal question about me turned into something coded. One guy asked how long I had been free from the noise. I said I didn't know what that meant, and he wrote something in a little notebook next to his plate. The woman across from me looked at my hands for a long time, then whispered 32 again like she was confirming something. Nobody ate much except me. They barely touched the food. They were more focused on me. Every time I wiped my face or took a sip, someone would tilt their head and type something in their phone. I kept telling myself maybe they were just weird, artsy people. Maybe this was how their friend group acted. I didn't want to judge too fast, so I tried to keep conversation going. Then I noticed something. Their phones weren't like normal phones. Cheap plastic. No cases. Black and plain. Like the type used for one thing then thrown away. Burner phones. I'd only seen those in movies. And the worst part, they kept angling them toward me like they were recording. I tried to brush it off. Maybe they were filming the dinner. Maybe this was some vlog thing. The angle was tight on my face. Not the table. Not everyone. Just me. She noticed I was looking at the phones too much. She put her hand on mine under the table, squeezing lightly like she didn't want me to get suspicious. But I already was. My heart was pounding like it wanted to run away before I could. The COVID talking got louder. Faster. One guy suddenly asked what crimes I committed today. I laughed because I thought it was another twisted joke, but he just stared at me waiting for a real answer. The girl next to him said he looks confused like they always do. I pretended to tie my shoe just so I could breathe for a second and think. Then one of the phones started buzzing nonstop. The guy holding it looked at the screen and whispered someone just paid. Everyone looked at him. He nodded slowly like receiving an order. Then he pointed the phone straight at me again and asked, "Did you hurt him because he said you would?" My whole body froze. I sat up straight and asked what the hell they meant. They all looked at me like I had ruined a performance, like I wasn't cooperating. One of them said it's fine, we can make him confess anyway. They all nodded again. The woman beside me grabbed a notebook and wrote something like charges pending. My voice cracked as I told her I was going to leave. She smiled with her mouth only, not her eyes, and said I should finish my drink first. I looked down and realized her glass was untouched, but mine was almost empty. I panicked so bad inside I felt dizzy. I didn't want to find out why she needed me to finish it. I stood up and said I needed the bathroom before anything else. I walked away calmly even though inside I wanted to sprint out the door. She watched me go. I didn't look back because I was scared to see all of them staring. In the hallway, I spotted a small camera above the bathroom door, recording inward, like they expected me to do something in there too. Instead of going in, I turned and quietly pushed on a side door with a coat rack blocking half of it. It led to the building hallway. I slipped out fast and started walking. Not running, walking, because running makes noise and attention. I picked up my phone and texted a friend my location just in case something happened. When I reached the lobby, I heard someone calling my name. She was running after me barefoot, coat still on the chair upstairs probably. She said I misunderstood. She said they were making a documentary about interrogation psychology. She begged me not to leave because the footage was worth a lot of money. She said I would get a cut if I just acted more guilty. I didn't even answer. I pushed the building door and ran across the street without checking cars. I didn't stop until I was half a mile away. I ducked behind a shop and watched the building to make sure she didn't follow me again. When I finally reached my place, I blocked her. I reported her account. I sat down on my bed and tried to make sense of what happened. Who was paying? Who thought I was a criminal? Why they wanted footage of me panicking like I was guilty of something? The next morning, I checked Hinge out of curiosity. Her profile was gone like she never existed. I still think about all the phones pointed at me, all the coded sentences, all the eyes watching like I was already sentenced. Everyone always jokes about being judged online, but sitting in that room, I was literally being sold to strangers as a fake criminal. They weren't joking. They weren't playing. They knew exactly what they were doing. I swear I didn't even want to go on this date. I had a long week, I looked tired, and Hinge was starting to feel like a game I was losing. But he messaged me with his golden retriever energy, all excited and sweet, and telling me he'd cook dinner for me because he was actually good at it. I thought, why not? Worst case, I eat something weird, then go home and block him. Best case, I get a free meal and a decent story. Turns out I did get a story, just not one I'd ever want. We met outside his house because he insisted on picking me up first, but I said no. He lived in a normal street, nice enough, nothing creepy from the outside. He opened the door before I'd even knocked, like he'd been watching the whole time. He smiled so wide my cheeks hurt just looking at him. He said I looked amazing and I tried to play along even though I was already feeling a bit nervous. Inside, the place smelled like pasta sauce and garlic bread. I love garlic bread, so that made me feel a tiny bit better. The lights were dim, not romantic dim, more like low-budget dim. He guided me to the dining area and told me to sit wherever. I sat in the chair closest to the door because, I don't know, maybe I'm more paranoid than I thought. We talked for a bit. He kept complimenting me, which was normal at first but got weird when he started listing things I never mentioned. He said he liked how I always tie my hair low on the right side. I never told him that. He said I looked cuter in glasses even though I wasn't wearing glasses and I don't post photos in glasses. I laughed nervously and told him he must be mixing me up with someone else. He smiled and whispered never. He brought me water before dinner. When I reached for the glass, I noticed a phone on the table next to his. The wallpaper was a close-up of my face, a picture I've never taken. I froze but tried to hide it. I told myself maybe photos look like each other sometimes. Maybe I just thought it was me. But then his phone buzzed again. He opened a drawer to put it away, and inside the drawer I saw more phones. at least 6 or 7, stacked messy, wires tangled. Most of them were unlocked for a split second while he moved them, and I saw wallpapers. All my face. Different outfits, different angles. Some looked like I had just woken up. Some looked like me walking from behind. Some looked like they were taken through a window. None of them were pictures I posted online. Not even close. I asked why he had so many phones. He laughed and said he buys them cheap because he likes spare backups. Then he said some people collect stamps. I collect memories. He winked like that was cute. I felt like my skin was shrinking. I looked around the room trying not to make it obvious. That's when I noticed something pointed at my seat. A tiny black object on a shelf behind a plant. I thought it was decoration, but it had a lens. A camera. Angled directly where I was sitting. I lowered myself a little like maybe it wouldn't see me, but I knew it already did. He returned from the kitchen holding plates and asked why I looked tense. I said I was just tired. He sat across from me, close, too close. He asked if I liked the vibe of his home. I nodded because I didn't want to make him angry. He leaned his elbow on the table and stared into my eyes without blinking, like he was trying to trap a reaction. I tried to come up with an excuse to leave. I said I forgot something in my car and I'd be right back. He shook his head and said I didn't need anything else because he had everything here for me. He said I could relax. The way he said it made me feel the exact opposite. The camera on the shelf made a tiny noise, like a click. He didn't react. He knew it was there. He wanted it there. My brain started spinning. I remembered something he said earlier while texting. I can't believe we've never met before. Feels like I already know you. At the time it sounded romantic. Now it sounded like a warning I didn't understand. He asked me to eat. I took a tiny bite just to not cause anything. I could feel his stare while I chewed. He watched every swallow, like the dinner wasn't really dinner, like I was in some stick audition. Then suddenly, a loud knock at the door. He flinched like he recognized the sound. His smile dropped. He stood up and told me to stay put. My heart started crashing into my ribs. The knock happened again, harder. A man shouted, "Police. Open up." I saw his whole face change into panic. He whispered to me not to say anything. He rushed for the phones and grabbed as many as he could, shoving them into a backpack. He told me they were just here for a misunderstanding. He said he would handle everything, and then we continued dinner like nothing happened. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The police knocked again and yelled they were coming in with a warrant for stolen tech tracked at this address. Before he could react, the door burst open and officers flooded into the room. They saw the phones immediately. They saw the camera aimed at me. They saw my face on multiple screens. The guy tried to explain he was innocent, that he was making a project about capturing beauty. The police didn't buy a single word. They cuffed him while he kept begging them to let him grab just one phone. He pleaded that he needed it, like he couldn't live without it. An officer came over to me and asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer right away. He told me the phones were stolen from a production company with tracking devices inside. That's how they found the house. He said the wallpaper photos were probably taken with hidden cameras around town, maybe even through my window, maybe while I slept. And the camera in the room wasn't just recording, it was streaming. To who, they didn't know yet. I walked outside with the officers and watched them pull boxes out of his home. Equipment, hard drives, tiny microphones, more phones. It never ended. An officer put a blanket over my shoulders like in every movie where someone survives something they shouldn't have survived. I got driven home that night. I sat in the back of the car staring at streetlights passing and trying not to puke. The officer said I was lucky they arrived when they did. Lucky he hadn't escalated. Lucky I noticed what I noticed. I didn't feel lucky. I felt violated. Like someone had stolen my entire life and stared at it without permission. Like every corner I ever stood in could have been filmed by him. I deleted Hinge. Again. Maybe forever this time. And now every time I see a tiny black dot in a room, I wonder if someone is watching me breathe. I matched with her on Hinge because she looked fun. She had colorful hair, cool outfits, and photos around street art spots I recognized. She messaged first saying she thought I had a creative vibe. Nobody ever says that to me, so I got hooked quick. She said she loved pop-up art shows and asked if I wanted to check one out with her that weekend. She said it would blow my mind. I thought finally something different from the usual drink and talk date. I told her yes without thinking twice. She said she would drive because the place was kind of hidden. When she picked me out, she was super excited. She kept talking about how real art happens away from museums and fancy galleries, out where only the bold go. I pretended I was bold too. She smiled every time I bragged about having good taste in art, even though I barely know anything besides memes and album covers. We drove farther from town than I expected. The streetlights got fewer and the buildings started looking older. She said that was the point, where real creativity lived. I tried to act chill, but in my head I wondered why art always has to be in creepy places. I asked if lots of people would be there. She said yeah, a special crowd. The way she said special wasn't comforting. When we finally pulled up, the place didn't look like an art venue at all. It was a warehouse with half the lights out, rust on the doors, and no signs. She said pop-ups don't announce themselves. You just have to know. She grabbed my hand and led me inside through a side door. The moment we stepped in, I noticed something was wrong. It didn't smell like paint or that arty, dusty smell. It smelled like hospitals and bleach. There were people inside, but none of them were looking at walls or sculptures. They stood around tables covered with metal trays, tools, glass containers. Nobody chatted about art. Nobody smiled. They all wore gloves. Some had masks. One guy had a clipboard and was staring at me way too long. I whispered to her asking where the art was. She said it just started. She squeezed my hand a bit too tight, like she didn't want me to run. Someone shut the door behind us. Locked it. That sound made my stomach twist. I told myself maybe they locked the door to keep the vibe private. But then a woman approached us wearing a lab coat, not a paint-splattered jacket. She looked me up and down and asked my height. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She wrote something down. Then she asked my weight. I didn't answer. She asked if I had any medical conditions she should know about. I said, why would she need to know that? The woman smirked and said quality matters. I turned to the girl I came with and asked what kind of art show this was. She said she wanted to surprise me. Her voice had no warmth now. She guided me forward toward a table with papers on it. The people around us watched closely. Her fingers stayed wrapped around my wrist like a clamp. The clipboard guy asked if I knew my blood type. I didn't. He seemed disappointed and waved someone else over. A man holding a needle kit. He grabbed my arm and tried to roll up my sleeve without asking. I yanked away and said no. The man said they needed to check something before bidding started. Bidding. That word hit me like a punch. I told them I wasn't part of anything and I was leaving. I tried to back up, but the woman in the lab coat blocked me. She said once someone enters, they can't just walk out. She said there are rules. I looked at the girl I came with. She didn't look scared. She looked proud, like she brought in something valuable. I said I didn't want to be here. She leaned close and said I was perfect. She said she picked me because I looked healthy. She said a lot of people would pay a ton of money for someone like me. She said the human body is priceless when divided right. She smiled and said that one night she'd be rich because of me. I tried to shove past her, but two men grabbed my arms. Strong, like they were used to this. They pushed me toward a chair like they wanted me seated for a show. I fought, but they were too strong. They tied one of my wrists to the chair arm. They strapped something around my bicep like they were taking my blood pressure. The guy with the needle prepared a tube and told me to stay still unless I wanted them to hold me down harder. I shouted for help, for anyone to hear. Someone laughed and said no one outside would hear anything over the machinery. Another voice said he looked terrified like the last one. They thought this was entertainment. The needle pierced my skin before I could yank my arm away. They collected blood in a tube. The clipboard guy looked at the color like he was checking quality. He nodded and said promising. The men around us murmured, like they were thinking about prices. I started kicking the chair legs and screaming louder. The girl who brought me there told me to stop overreacting, and it wouldn't take long, and I should feel honored. I didn't have time to think of a comeback because suddenly alarms went off. Loud and sharp. Red lights flashing. Everyone froze for half a second. Then chaos. People started hiding things under tarps and shoving equipment into containers. Someone yelled that the sirens were close. I heard actual real police sirens outside, getting louder, more urgent. The lab coat woman shouted to grab what they could and move me to the back. They didn't want to lose their product. They didn't even call me human. One man unhooked the tube from my arm but didn't bother to stop the bleeding. The girl grabbed my chin and said this wasn't over. She said I was supposed to make her life better. She said I ruined it. I told her she was sick. She slapped me hard and told the men to drag me. They tried. I kicked and twisted and bit one of their arms. He cursed and let go. I took the chance and bolted toward the door I thought we entered from. People rushed everywhere, yelling, dropping tools, running into each other. I shoved past them, slipping on something wet I didn't want to think about. The door burst open as I reached it. Officers swarmed in yelling commands, guns drawn. They grabbed the men near me and shouted for everyone to get on the ground. I put my hands up even though one was bleeding badly. They pulled me outside fast. The air felt like freedom hitting my face. I almost fell, but an officer caught me. He asked if I was hurt. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. He told me they had been after this operation for a long time. They tracked illegal medical gear that led them here. He said I was lucky they came when they did. Lucky, that curse word again. I looked back once. They had the girl pinned against a wall. She saw me and screamed that I owed her everything. That she picked me for a reason. That she would find me again someday. The officer shut the car door so I couldn't hear her anymore. At the hospital, a nurse cleaned my arm and asked what happened. I said a girl invited me to an art show. She looked at me like she wanted to believe it was a joke. I almost wanted to laugh, but I couldn't. I deleted Hinge that night in the waiting room. I keep checking my doors twice. Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm still tied to a chair in that warehouse. I hear sirens in my head and smell bleach everywhere I go. Art isn't always what you think it is. Sometimes it's just someone deciding which pieces of you are worth the most. I always joke that Hinge is just people showing off their best angles and hoping someone clicks. I didn't expect anything real to come from it, but that I matched with him. He looked normal. Not too flashy, not too creepy. He messaged first, calling me pretty in a way that didn't sound like a copy-paste line. He asked about my hobbies, my job, my favorite films, and then he asked about my past relationships, like right away. I laughed it off and said something dumb like, "Oh God, let's not go there." But he kept circling back to it. Who hurt you? How long was your longest relationship? Why did it end? Did you ever feel truly loved? He said he liked to understand someone's past to know how to treat them better. I thought maybe he was just emotionally deep or whatever, the kind of guy who reads too many self-help quotes. He suggested we meet at his place for dinner. I said I'd rather go out somewhere public first, but he insisted he made the best homemade pizza and didn't want to waste the ingredients he bought. I gave in because I was bored and honestly pizza sounded nice. He sent me his address and told me to ring the side bell because the front buzzer was broken. When I got there, he opened the door in this super proud way like he worked all day on the moment. The house was tidy. Too tidy. Not a speck of dust anywhere. He complimented my outfit like 10 times before we even sat down. He asked again about my exes while pouring drinks. I said I didn't want to talk about them. He nodded but kept asking small questions like their names, what they did, who dumped who. He said he hated when someone hurt a girl like me and he wanted to know who he should blame. That's when I started to get a weird vibe. Not scary yet, just uncomfortable. He noticed me getting quiet and told me he didn't mean to upset me. He kept apologizing while smiling too wide, like he was practicing looking harmless. The pizza actually smelled amazing. He handed me a plate and told me to sit while he grabbed the sauce from the kitchen. I sat at the little table near the hallway. I drank a sip of water and tried to relax. I told myself everyone has quirks. Maybe he was just nervous and over-talking. I wanted the night to be normal. Then I told him I needed the bathroom real quick before eating. He pointed to a door down the hallway and told me to take my time. He said it like he was relieved I didn't run out the door right then. The hallway was dim. I opened the bathroom door and flicked the light on. First thing I noticed was a big mirror. Second thing I noticed was something taped behind the door. At first glance, it looked like printed pages. But then I saw faces, profiles, screenshots of Hinge bios, Instagram grids, the little circular icons from messaging apps. I leaned closer. I recognized some of them. My ex from 2 years ago. The guy I dated briefly last summer. Even the stupid guy who ghosted me after one date. There were arrows drawn between some of the pictures. Red pen circling usernames. Printed conversations. Details highlighted. My hands instantly felt cold. I scanned the whole wall, and that's when I noticed the one picture I hope I'd never see. Me, a photo from my private Instagram that I never showed him. Next to my picture were printed screenshots of my Hinge profile and old pictures with my exes. Underneath that section, in messy red marker, one word: next, and an arrow pointing toward the kitchen. My head spun so fast I had to grab the sink. I whispered no over and over like that would undo what I was seeing. I felt like I had walked straight into a trap with my name already written on it. I tried to calm my breathing so he wouldn't hear panic in my voice. I stepped backward quietly, thinking maybe I could slip out through the hallway without him noticing. But as soon as I opened the bathroom door, he was right there, standing too close, smiling like he had been waiting for me to see it. I tried to pretend I didn't notice the wall, but he saw the fear on my face instantly. He said he liked to study patterns. He said relationships are puzzles, and he wanted to know every piece before he committed. He said he enjoyed how my eyes looked when I was scared because it showed I cared about living. He asked if I thought my past made me stronger or easier to break. I told him I needed air. He said we had plenty of air right here. I moved past him fast, pretending I wasn't shaking. I reached the table and said I forgot something in my car. He laughed and said I didn't need anything from my old life anymore. He said I should focus on the future, and he looked right at the knife next to the pizza cutter. My heart was punching my ribs. I glanced around the room and spotted something else that made everything worse. A tiny camera in the corner pointed exactly at where I had been sitting. There was another near the window, maybe more I didn't notice yet. He wasn't just planning something. He wanted to record every reaction, document everything, maybe add me to the wall later. I stood up slowly and told him I should use the bathroom again. He stepped closer instead of letting me go. I could smell the sauce on his shirt and hear his breath. He asked if I was leaving like the others did. He said they didn't last because they weren't meant for him. He said I was different. I looked him dead in the eyes and said someone was outside waiting for me. I lied. I said they were texting me right now. His smile cracked a little. He stepped back. I used that second to grab my phone and pretend to read a message. He leaned over trying to see it. I held it up like proof. He took one more step, trying to corner me, but before he could reach me, there was a loud banging at the front door. He froze. I didn't. I ran. The banging came again louder, and a voice shouted, "Police. Open up." He yelled at me not to move, but I was already at the door, unlocking everything as fast as my shaking fingers could. The police burst in before he even reached me. They shoved him against the wall while he screamed that he did nothing wrong. I kept backing up until I hit the outside air. An officer guided me away, asking if I was hurt. I couldn't talk. He told me they tracked stolen electronic equipment to this location and suspected hidden surveillance happening from inside. He said that's why they came. He said they didn't expect to find me. He said if they arrived later, they might have found something much worse. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hunted. As they led me to the patrol car, I looked back once. The guy was staring at me like I ruined the best moment of his life, like I was supposed to be proud to be the next picture on his wall. I deleted Hinge that night. I changed all my accounts. I covered my mirrors for a while and taped over every camera lens I could find, because now I know some people don't want love. They want a collection. And I was almost the next piece he pinned on that wall. If anyone ever asks me what the creepiest part of online dating is, I'll say it's how fast someone can decide you're the most important person in their life without actually knowing you. That's exactly what happened here. She decided I mattered way too fast. We matched on Hinge late one night. She messaged instantly. She said she liked my smile and that I seemed like someone worth keeping around forever. I thought that was just flirty exaggeration. She asked if I wanted to meet up the next day. She seemed excited, and I didn't want to kill the vibe, so I said sure. We met at a small park near the river. She ran up to me with her phone already in her hand and snapped a picture before I could even say hi. She giggled and said she liked documenting first moments. I told myself that was kind of adorable. She wasn't shy at all. She asked if we could walk and talk. I said yeah, obviously. Every few steps, she'd lift her phone and take another picture, not selfies, just me. I joked like while I didn't know I had a photo shoot today. She said she liked making memories and that people forget faces too easily. I smiled awkwardly because what do you even say to that? She told me not to worry, that I looked perfect in every shot. She said it like she was reassuring herself, not me. We got ice cream and she asked me about my life. But every time I started talking, she raised the phone again and snapped 2 or 3 photos of me mid-sentence. Then she'd stare at them like she was checking if I belonged in them. The more I talked, the more she photographed. After about an hour, I asked how many photos she took. She said over 200 already. She said she liked different angles so she could remember how I'd looked in every second. My brain tried to play it cool, but something about that number made my stomach feel weird. Still, I stayed because she seemed harmless. Nervous maybe, but harmless. She asked if we could sit on a bench and watch boats go by. I agreed. She sat close enough that our arms touched. She rested her head on my shoulder like we've been dating for months. I froze a bit, but let it happen. She whispered that she couldn't believe how lucky she was to find me. I didn't know how to respond, so I just laughed quietly, hoping she couldn't hear how uncomfortable I was getting. Then she took my hand and held it up toward the sky to get the sunset in the background while she took 20 different photos of our hands together. Her grip was too tight, like she didn't want me to move. I said my hand was getting tired, and she loosened it reluctantly. I told her I was going to grab water from the vending machine a few meters away. She said she'd come with me. She never let me walk anywhere alone. She didn't even let me stand without taking another picture from a different angle. People walked by, and some of them stared, either at her snapping nonstop or at my face, which probably looked like a trapped animal. I finally suggested heading to a cafe so we could sit somewhere warmer. She agreed instantly, but only after she snapped one more picture of me walking toward the exit gate. I heard the shutter click again and again. I pretended I didn't notice. As we walked toward the cafe area, a guy in jeans and a hoodie stepped directly in front of me. He didn't look drunk or aggressive. He just calmly asked if I was okay. I said yeah, confused. He ignored my answer and asked me again, but slower. He looked right into my eyes like he needed to know the truth. The girl instantly moved between us and told him to mind his own business. Her voice changed tone quick, like she was hiding something sharp under all the sweetness. She grabbed my arm like she owned it and told him we were fine. The guy didn't move. He reached into his pocket slowly and showed a badge, a real one. Not shiny and dramatic like movies, but real enough that my heart dropped into my stomach. He asked again if I was there by choice. She tugged my arm harder and said she had every right to take pictures of her boyfriend. Boyfriend. We'd known each other for like 3 hours. The officer looked at me and asked if I knew about her record. I said no because what record? He asked if I gave her permission to take that many images of me. I said I didn't really know what to say because I didn't want to make her snap. She clung to me so tight that I could feel her shaking. The officer explained that she had multiple restraining orders in different cities, that she had followed and photographed other guys before, that she became obsessed fast, convinced she owned people she liked. He said she was flagged on dating apps, but sometimes slipped through. She denied everything. She called him a liar. She said I shouldn't believe strangers. Her voice got louder, desperate. She pulled out her phone and tried to take more photos of me right there. The officer then asked her to hand over the phone. She refused. She tightened her grip on me like she was scared someone would steal me. When she tried to pull me away, the officer gently put a hand on her arm and said she needed to stop. She screamed at him not to touch her. More plainclothes officers appeared from benches nearby like they had been watching the whole time. She tried to run, dragging me with her, but they blocked us. She dropped her phone, and it hit the ground where the screen lit up with a gallery of my face. Hundreds of images, all from today. Some taken when I looked away for just a second. Some close-ups of my neck, my hands, my hair. And some photos that looked like they were taken before we even met. Through windows, from sidewalks. I saw one where I was unlocking my front door a week ago. The officer put cuffs on her while she kept screaming that I was hers. She swore she was protecting me. She said other people would hurt me, but she wouldn't. She screamed my name like I had chosen her, like I belonged to her story. They walked her to a police car while I stood there staring at her phone lying on the ground. The officer picked it up and told me not to worry, that I was safe now, that she was going somewhere she couldn't follow me. Safe is a weird word after something like that. Safe didn't feel real. Safe felt like a temporary moment before another stranger decides I look like someone they should keep. I never got to eat dinner. I went home and deleted Hinge again. I sat on my bed scrolling through my own photos wondering which ones she stared at, and when she first decided I was her next memory. The scariest part isn't that she took all those pictures. It's that she probably thought she was making something beautiful. First thing I noticed was the confidence. Like not cute confidence, but the kind that feels like he practiced in the mirror. We matched on Hinge, and he messaged me instantly telling me I had the kind of face that deserved real romance. I thought that was cheesy, but whatever, I've heard worse. He asked if we could get dinner right away because he said connections fade if you wait too long. That should have been my first warning, but I ignored it. I told myself I should at least try to be open-minded. The restaurant he picked was one I actually liked, but I had only been there twice. It wasn't fancy, but had candles and quiet music, and it was busy enough to feel normal. I showed up a few minutes early, and he walked in exactly on time. He didn't hug me, didn't even ask if he could. He just grabbed the chair across from me and stared like I was already supposed to be impressed. He smiled at me like he already owned the date. He didn't ask if I liked the place. He didn't ask about my day. He just started telling me about himself like he was reading from a script he thought would make him look amazing. Bragging about his job, his car, his gym routine. I tried to be polite, but my mind drifted because nothing he said felt real. It felt like he was auditioning to be somebody. Then the waiter came over, handed us menus, and asked if we wanted to start with drinks. I opened the menu to check what they had. Before I could even look at anything, he closed my menu for me and said we'll have 2 sparkling waters. The waiter wrote it down. I laughed nervously and said I might want something else. He shook his head and said he already knew what I liked. I asked how he'd know that. He said he could just tell. He tapped the table like that answer should be enough. When the waiter came back for food orders, I tried again to look at the menu, but he took it from my hands and told the waiter we'll have the house pasta for her and the steak for me. He didn't even glance at me while he said it, like I was a doll someone programmed to eat whatever he chose. I told him I didn't even like pasta that much. He smiled and said that's because you've never had the right kind, like he was saving me, like I should be grateful. At that exact moment, the little voice in my head said leave. He kept leaning closer, talking about how he likes a girl who lets a man lead. He repeated that over and over, that he knew what was best. He said he didn't want someone difficult, someone with too many opinions. He said those girls usually end up alone. I stared at the exit behind him. I thought I could just stand up and go. Say I felt sick. Say anything. I tried to steer the conversation to something normal like movies, music, pets, but he would turn those into lectures too. He said he didn't watch movies unless they made him feel powerful. He said he hated dogs because they take attention away from him. He said cats are manipulators. Everything he said made him sound more controlling. The pasta arrived, and he pushed the plate toward me. He watched me like if I didn't eat it, I'd embarrass him. I took the smallest bite possible and pretended it tasted amazing so he wouldn't get angry. He said, "See, I told you," and smiled in this slow, creepy way. I told him I needed to use the bathroom. He grabbed my wrist and told me to wait until after dessert because girls always go in groups anyway. I pulled my hand away and said I really had to go. He stared at me like I insulted him. He exhaled like I had ruined something special just by needing 5 seconds away. In the bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror and said we are leaving. No excuses. I took a breath, walked back out, and picked up my coat. He asked where I was going. I said I needed air and that I didn't feel well. He stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly. He followed right behind me. I stepped outside and he grabbed my shoulder. Not painfully, but definitely not gentle. He said I was overreacting and that I owed him at least a proper goodbye. I told him not to touch me and tried to walk faster, but he matched every step. He started raising his voice saying nobody ever appreciates how much he does for them. Like ordering food for me was some heroic act. That's when the security guard from the front walked over. Big guy, looked like he'd seen a lot. He got between us and asked if everything was okay. I said I was fine, but he didn't believe me. He turned to the guy and asked if he forgot the rules. The guy suddenly looked nervous. Tiny cracks in his performance. He told the guard to mind his business. The guard said this is my business. Then he turned to me and asked quietly if I came with him by choice. I said yes, but I wanted to leave now. The guard nodded like he had been waiting for me to say that. He told the guy to go back inside because he wasn't allowed to follow women out anymore. The guy lost it, yelling that the guard was ruining his chance. The guard stepped closer, voice low but firm, telling him to back off or he'd call the police again. Again. My heart flipped. I asked what he meant. The guard said the guy had been banned from the restaurant multiple times for dates that went bad. He said last time the guy grabbed a girl's hair when she tried to leave and they had to pry him off her. He said she pressed charges. He said they keep a picture of him in the back to warn staff. The guy started yelling that everyone lies about him because they can't handle a real man. The guard held up his hand and the guy finally stepped away, but not without glaring at me like I had betrayed him. The guard gently guided me toward a safer spot away from the entrance. He told me to block the guy on everything and report him if he tried anything. He waited until I'd ordered a ride home. The guy stood across the street staring but didn't come back over. When my ride arrived, I got in fast and locked the door. I watched the restaurant shrink in the mirror, that guy still burning holes into me with his eyes. I deleted Hinge that night, again. I keep thinking about the moment he ordered for me, how small it seemed at first, how easy it is to ignore the first red flag. But now to know some people aren't trying to share a meal. They're trying to control the whole menu. The only reason I agreed to meet her was because she seemed completely normal. Like actually normal. No weird clues in her profile. Nothing about destiny or soulmates or hashtags about loyalty. She just liked movies, dogs, and long drives. That sounded safe enough for me to take a chance. We matched on Hinge on a weekday night, and she said we should hang out while the roads were empty. She told me she had a car and asked if I liked late drives with good music. That's honestly one of my fave things, so I said yes way too quickly. She told me to meet her near the shopping center because she didn't want to deal with the parking lot traffic. I showed up and she waved me over. She looked even better in person, which made me less suspicious and more eager to impress. She tossed her keys to me out of nowhere and said I should drive. I laughed thinking she was joking, but she insisted. She said she liked when a guy took the lead. I didn't think too deep about it at the time. I thought maybe she was just nervous driving at night. The car didn't look new, but not terrible either. Kind of dirty inside, like she didn't really care about it. I opened the door and the first thing that hit me was the smell. Rotten, like something died inside. Not like food left out for a day. More like you'd puke if you inhaled too long. I gagged without trying to. She climbed to the passenger side and asked if I didn't like air fresheners. I said something stank, and she just said, "Oh, right, sorry," and rolled the window down. I tried not to react too much because I didn't want to be rude. Maybe there was trash somewhere under the seats. Maybe she spilled milk in here months ago and forgot. I put on the seatbelt and started the engine. She told me which direction to go and then leaned back like she was finally relaxed now that I was driving. We talked a bit. She kept staring at me, though. Not cute staring, but like she was studying my face. She asked if I ever thought about how fragile people are. I said not really. She said anyone could disappear and nobody would guess who was responsible. I laughed because I thought she was being edgy, but she didn't laugh back. She just told me to keep going straight. Every few minutes, she looked in the side mirror like she expected a car to follow us. I asked if she was okay, and she said totally. She said she just didn't want to run into someone she knew. When I asked who, she said someone annoying. Then she changed the subject again. The smell got worse the longer we drove. It felt like it was crawling inside my lungs. I cracked my window more, but the air outside barely helped. I casually mentioned maybe she should get the car checked. She said she will soon. She said the smell only started today. That sentence stuck in my brain like a nail. I told her I wanted to stop for gum or something to help with the smell. She pointed out a petrol station up ahead. I pulled in and parked near the side so the lights would hit less directly. I unbuckled fast because I needed fresh air. When I stepped out, I breathed like it was my first breath in forever. She followed me out and leaned on the car watching me like she was seeing what I'd do next. I said I'd be right back and walked toward the station doors. I had barely taken 5 steps when I heard loud sirens in the distance. Not behind us, but closing in fast. I turned around and saw the girl stiffen like she knew exactly why those sirens were coming. She told me to get back in the car. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It sounded like a warning. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "Just get in now." I didn't move. She stepped closer and grabbed my arm much harder than she should have. I yanked it away and asked what was happening. She looked around like an animal trapped. Then she said something I will never forget. She said I needed to trust her and drive because if the police saw her car, we'd both be in trouble. The way she said both sounded like I was already stuck with her decisions. The sirens got louder. 2 police cars pulled into the station fast, lights flashing. Officers jumped out and shouted for us to stay where we were. She whispered to me that I shouldn't talk to them, that they'd twist everything. She grabbed the handle of the passenger door like she was going to dive inside and make me drive away. I stepped back instead, faking confusion so it didn't look like I was with her. One officer pointed at her and yelled her name like he had been waiting to catch her. He told her to put her hands up. She dropped the keys and froze. I stood there shaking because I didn't understand anything yet, but I knew I was about to. Another officer approached me and asked why I was driving her vehicle. I said she asked me to so I could impress her. My voice cracked, and I probably sounded like the dumbest guy alive. He told me to stay still and asked if I knew what the car was tied to. I said no. He said a body had been found earlier and someone saw a car just like this speeding away from the area. He said the registration was connected to the girl beside me. She started yelling that she did nothing wrong, that the car was stolen earlier and returned later. She kept saying she didn't hurt anyone. One officer said they found blood inside the trunk when they searched it at her place last week, but she ran before they could arrest her. She denied everything. She shouted that she was trying to get rid of the car today. She said she wanted me to drive it so if cameras caught it again, it wouldn't be her behind the wheel. That sentence made my stomach drop through the ground. She turned to me and screamed that I ruined everything by stopping, that I should have listened. The officers grabbed her and cuffed her while she kept twisting to stare right at me. Her eyes didn't look scared. They looked angry, betrayed, like she thought we were partners or something. The officer with me checked me for weapons and then asked if I was hurt. I shook my head, but I felt like my insides were melting. He told me I was lucky. Always that word. He said I might have become part of evidence if I drove any further. He said I needed to get checked just in case the smell wasn't just smell. They taped off the area around the car and officers started putting on gloves and opening the truck. I didn't look. I couldn't. I stared at the pavement instead, breathing fast like I had to relearn how. She kept screaming from the police car that she didn't kill anyone, that she just needed a witness, that I would have understood if I trusted her. I didn't reply. I couldn't even look at her. They took her away. The car stayed behind, surrounded by flashing lights and gloves and bags and questions I didn't want answers to. The officer told me a taxi would take me home and that I could give a statement tomorrow when I calmed down. I sat in the taxi and watched the petrol station shrink behind me. I deleted Hinge before we reached the first traffic light. Every time I pass a car now, I wonder if someone trusted the wrong person a few hours before. I wonder if the smell inside a car is just trash or if it's someone's last secret. Sometimes you just want a nice drive. Sometimes someone wants you to drive straight into their crime scene. I always thought meeting someone's family happened after months of dating, not hours. But this guy from Hinge acted like we had been together forever. We matched in the afternoon, talked for a bit, and by evening he said he wanted me to meet the most important people in his life. I laughed and said that was fast. He said when you know, he kept saying I was different. That word made me uncomfortable, but I still agreed to grab dinner with him and maybe just see how it goes. I didn't think he meant taking me to his family's house instead of a restaurant. He picked me up wearing a sweater with little embroidered stars on it. He told me his family lived close by and that they were already excited to meet me, because he had shown them my pictures. He said they thought I looked perfect. It was weird, but he said it so casually I didn't want to argue. I figured maybe it was just a very tight family, or he misunderstood how dating works. As we drove, I noticed him checking the rearview mirror a lot, like he expected someone behind us. I asked if he was okay. He said he didn't want anyone to ruin tonight. When I asked what that meant, he just smiled and said nothing will go wrong this time. I didn't like the word this, but I tried to keep calm. His house was bigger than I expected. Not mansion big, but big enough that I wondered how he could afford it at his age. The lights inside looked warm and friendly, like one of those houses in holiday adverts. He guided me in quickly, almost rushing, and told me to sit on the couch while he grabbed something from the kitchen. When I walked into the living room, I saw 4 people already sitting there waiting, 2 adults and 2 younger ones. They all looked like a typical family, except something about them was off. They were sitting too straight, hands on their laps, heads tilted perfectly forward. They stared right at me, wide eyes, no blinking. No expressions changing, just looking. I said hello softly. Nobody answered. They all just kept staring with stiff smiles. I tried waving. Nothing. For a second, I thought maybe they were just awkward or shy. But people blink, right? Even awkward ones. I counted in my head. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5, 10. I looked away because it was creeping me out too much. The guy came back holding a tray of snacks and said, "Look, they love you already." I whispered that they weren't saying anything. He just laughed and said they liked to observe first. He leaned toward one of them and stroked their hair like they were a cat. The person didn't react at all. Not a flinch. I tried to act normal, but my heartbeat was way too loud in my ears. He asked me to join them and sit between his siblings. I hesitated, but he gently pushed me toward the couch. I sat down, stiff, feeling their shoulders pressed against mine. Their skin felt cold. Not cold like someone was outside a minute ago. Cold like a fridge. He stood in front of us and said he was happy because now everything was complete. He started talking about how he had built a perfect life and how each piece of it needed to match. He said his family always supports his choices. He said they don't argue like real people do. That sentence punched me in the stomach. Real people. I turned my head just a little and looked at the sibling next to me. Their eyes didn't move, not even a tiny twitch. I lifted my hand slowly and waved it in front of their face. Nothing. I think I stopped breathing for a second. Then something even worse happened. The mother figure suddenly jerked like someone pulled a plug. She made a glitching sound, a tiny buzzing, and then her head tilted all the way backward too far for a human neck. Her jaw opened, but no sound came out. Then she collapsed sideways off the couch, hitting the ground with a loud hollow clunk like metal under fabric. I jumped up and backed away so fast I nearly fell over. He shouted, "No, not now, not when I finally brought someone home." He rushed to the collapsed body and tried to lift her, wires poking out from the back of her neck. I saw metal plates under her skin. Not like any medical thing. She wasn't human. None of them were. They were androids, like full human-looking robots. My throat locked up when I realized the others still hadn't blinked once. They remained still, staring forward, waiting for instructions, like machines. He looked up at me with panic in his eyes. He said the update wasn't supposed to fail anymore. He said he fixed that issue months ago. I asked what this was. He said something that made everything spin. He said he custom-made his family after losing the real ones. He said he used recognition software to shape them based on the people who mattered most in him. Then he looked at me and said, "Now that includes you." I said I needed to leave right now. He stood up quick, blocking the doorway. He said he'd never hurt me. He said he just needed me to stay still while he finished sensing my profile with the system. He pointed to a little camera in the corner of the room. I saw images flickering on a screen behind him. Photos of me from my Hinge profile, but also from places I'd been recently. Ones I didn't know were taken. He had been collecting my face, my movement, my expressions. He said once the scan completed, they would all know me like family. He said they would protect me. He said I would never be alone again. I kept stepping back. My legs felt like rubber. I was shaking so hard that my voice cracked when I told him to stay away. The mother android on the floor started twitching with little zapping noises. He swore under his breath and tried kicking something under her back into place. I took that distraction and ran for the back door. I didn't look at the others. I didn't want to see if they turned their heads to follow me. The door wasn't locked. I bolted outside onto the lawn and sprinted faster than I ever had before. I heard him screaming behind me saying I was ruining everything, that he wasn't finished making the perfect family. I kept running. I didn't stop until I reached a street with cars and actual real people. I called my friend and begged her to pick me up. I didn't even explain because the words would have sounded insane. That night, I reported him. Police said they'd checked the property. I don't know what they found. I don't want to know. I just block every unknown number now. I keep blinds closed. I unplugged devices that have cameras. I deleted Hinge and everything else. Because somewhere out there, in a house that looks safe from the outside, sits a couch of androids with faces someone programmed to love whoever he chooses. And for a moment, I was going to be part of that family. I always thought stargazing sounded cute, like a peaceful date idea straight out of some soft movie. So when she from Hinge asked if I liked stars, I said, yeah, of course. She said she knew a quiet spot outside the city where the stars looked brighter than anywhere else. She said we could bring snacks and relax on the grass. That sounded way better than another boring coffee meetup. She looked normal in her pics, hoodies, sunsets, that kind of vibe. In messages she was fun and playful, but a little secretive sometimes. She kept asking if anyone knew I was going out tonight. I thought she was just making sure I wasn't a creep or something. She told me not to tell anyone the exact spot because she wanted it to be our thing. I didn't think much of it. She picked me up in her old car. Music playing low, windows open. She smiled a lot but didn't talk much. I tried to keep conversation going, but she kept staring at the road like she was counting something in her head. I asked how far this place was. She said not long. She said the stars are better where nobody else goes. The city lights faded behind us. Street lights got fewer. Trees covered most of the road. It got darker and darker until I could barely see anything outside the car except the headlights ahead. I asked if we were still in the right direction. She said, "Trust me." I tried. We reached a gate that was half broken. Beyond it was a wide open field. Tall grass swaying like something was hiding in it. She parked and shut the car off. Suddenly, everything was silent. No cars. No houses. Just us. She grabbed a blanket and told me to follow her to the center of the field. My phone signal died the moment I stepped out. Stars were bright, but the air felt too still. I kept looking over my shoulder because the darkness around us felt thick. We laid the blanket down and she sat close to me. She pointed up and named a couple of stars like she practiced it. I relaxed a tiny bit, but the weird feeling didn't go away. She asked if I was having fun. I nodded even though my stomach was tight. Then she asked something weird. She asked if I had ever met someone online who turned out completely different in real life. I said yeah once or twice. She laughed softly, but didn't explain why she asked. She checked her phone screen, even though there was no signal. I asked if she was waiting for someone else. She said no. Her voice wobbled like that was a lie. She suddenly sat up straighter, like she heard something. I didn't hear anything at first. Then grass moved a few meters away. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. I whispered what was that. She didn't answer. She just stared into the dark. Shadows appeared. 5 men stepping out of the grass like they grew from the soil. They walked toward us silently. They had night vision goggles on their heads pushed up, and each one carried a camera with a big lens that looked military level. My heart almost exploded. I stood up fast, ready to run, but one of them raised a hand and told me not to move. My voice cracked asking who they were. None of them looked at me like a real person. Their eyes kept flicking between me and her. One of them said target is confirmed. I said target? Me. What the hell was happening? She didn't look scared. She looked guilty. I told her to tell me what was going on. She didn't look at me. She stared at the ground like she wanted to disappear. Finally, she said sorry. Just that. A small sorry like she bumped my shoulder, not ruined my night. The men surrounded me. One pulled out a tablet showing a picture of me from my Hinge profile. Another picture of me walking into her car earlier. Then a third picture of me from weeks ago leaving my gym. I asked how they got all that. One of them said she gave them access. I tried to step back, but someone grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. I yelled at her to tell them to let me go. She finally spoke clearly. She said there was a dangerous man she had been trying to catch for months. She said she had been catfishing him using different fake accounts. She said he always blocked her before she could track him properly. She said he targeted guys who looked like me. The men said tonight was supposed to be the night the real target showed up following her gear. They expected him to attack her. They thought he would think she was alone. That's why they used me. Bait. I felt sick. She set me up. She didn't want a date. She wanted a body double. She wanted the real psycho to come instead of me. But she matched me by accident. They kept scanning the field with their night vision cameras and radios. One said the target might still be nearby. Every sound made me flinch. The grass moved behind us, and one of the men shouted spotlight. A flashlight beam shot into the field, but nothing was there. I begged them to take me out of there. One guy said not yet. He said if they left now, they'd lose the chance to catch the monster. He said it was only a matter of time before he showed up. I looked at her and asked why she didn't tell me anything. She said I seemed kind. She said she hoped maybe the guy would come if he saw me. She said she didn't think about what would happen if it was just me and no one else. Another weak sorry slipped out like that fixed anything. I could hear my pulse in my ears. The men kept whispering codes into radios. The grass moved again, but farther away. They aimed cameras and froze each time. The wind felt colder now, like everything around us knew something bad was coming. Then a loud metallic chime echoed in the distance. One of the cameras beeped. The tablet flashed a warning. Someone was out there watching us. One man shouted lock perimeter. The others started moving fast, surrounding me like I was a briefcase with diamonds in it. One guy grabbed my shoulder and told me to stay low and walk behind them. Finally, they were ready to leave. I turned to look for her, but she stayed kneeling on the blanket, hugging herself, shaking. She didn't follow us. Maybe she wanted her plan to succeed more than she cared about me getting away. The men pushed me toward the gate and kept scanning behind them. I didn't look back again. I didn't want to see who might be watching us from the tall grass. I didn't want to know what almost found me tonight. When we reached the road, they shoved me into their van and slammed the door. I sat there shaking so hard I couldn't talk. One of them told me I was safe now, that they'd take me somewhere secure until they made sure I wasn't followed. Safe, that word again. Every time I hear it now, I feel less safe. They let me go in the morning with a warning not to share details. They said they were still hunting the real target. They said if he saw my face, he'd remember. I deleted Hinge before they even dropped me off. I don't look at stars anymore. My friends always say I trust people too easily, and I guess they're right, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have been in that flat. I matched with a guy on Hinge who seemed normal enough. He had a cute smile, worked in some tech job, and loved Italian food. He asked if we could go out for dinner one night. I said yes. Easy. Simple. But then he asked a tiny favor. Before we headed out, he said he needed help moving something heavy in his flat. He said it'd take 2 minutes, and then we'd go straight to dinner. I hesitated for a second because that kind of request felt random. But I told myself it was just a normal thing. People ask for help moving boxes all the time. He sounded polite, not pushy. So I agreed like an idiot. He met me outside his building and held the door open with the most charming smile. He kept thanking me for being so sweet and understanding. He led me up 2 flights of stairs while talking about pasta and how the restaurant had the best stuff in the city. He made it sound like he was so hungry and rushed that he just needed to sort this little thing first. But when he unlocked his door and stepped inside, something felt wrong immediately. The air smelled like chemicals and plastic. Sharp and clean, but in that fake way, like a hospital that forgot to hide what it's doing. The lights were bright, too bright for a home. I walked in slowly behind him, and my stomach flipped so fast I almost turned around. The entire flat was covered in plastic sheets. The hallway floor, the walls, even the ceiling in some places. Like someone wrapped the space to keep every drop of something contained. I noticed rolls of plastic stacked in a corner. Zip ties scattered on a small table along with duct tape and thick gloves. The furniture had plastic covering too, like it wasn't supposed to get dirty. He closed the door behind me. The sound of the lock clicking echoed way too much. I kept telling myself maybe he was painting or doing some renovation work. That could explain it. But why zip ties? Why the exact type of setup you see in crime shows when something horrible is about to happen? He moved closer to me and said he was glad I came because not everyone is this trusting. He said trust is the most important part of a relationship. He said he could tell I had good instincts. I stood frozen and forced myself to smile even though my heart was punching my ribs trying to escape. He pointed to something large wrapped in plastic against the wall. He said that's what he needed help moving. I didn't want to ask what was inside. I didn't want to know. I said I wasn't strong enough, but he just laughed and said I'd do fine. I took a tiny step back toward the door. He noticed. His smile dropped for a second. He said I should relax. He said everything will make sense soon. His voice wasn't friendly anymore. It was flat, rehearsed, like he shifted from pretending to be a nice guy to whatever he actually was. I swallowed hard and tried to keep calm. I told him maybe we should just head to dinner first and move it later. He shook his head and said this can't wait. He started walking toward me. Slow steps, watching my every move. My hands started sweating so badly that I nearly dropped my phone. I considered calling someone, but he was too close now. He reached out like he was going to grab my arm. I flinched away. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. He said, "Don't worry, they'll be over soon," and he glanced at the roll of zip ties. I swear I was seconds away from either screaming or passing out. I didn't know what to do. Run. Fight. Beg. I could feel the plastic under my shoes sticking slightly, like it was waiting to catch a mess. He stepped behind me and pushed the door shut fully, twisting the lock again, even though it was already locked. He said I shouldn't think too much, just help a little. I heard his footsteps getting closer again, and I tried to breathe, but every breath felt like knives. Then loud pounding hit the door. He froze. I froze. Someone shouted, "Police." "Open the door." The voice was strong and commanding. My head almost split open from relief and shock mixed together. He didn't move at first, like he was deciding whether to ignore it. Then they shouted again, and the pounding turned into full-on smashing. The door flew open as the officers broke it down. They rushed in like a storm, weapons drawn. Everything happened so fast. They grabbed him instantly, forcing him to the ground while he started screaming about invasion of privacy. Others came to me and asked if I was hurt. I couldn't even answer. I was shaking too much to speak. They checked the flat, pulled back parts of the plastic wrapping. One officer saw the big wrapped shape against the wall and called out something serious. They removed layers, and what I read was the mess. Dark stains, something heavy inside. I looked away because I couldn't handle what that meant. Another officer told me the guy had been under investigation for weeks. Neighbors reported strange deliveries. Someone noticed him buying industrial-strength cleaning chemicals in huge amounts. The police had been waiting for a warrant. They just got it tonight, and luckily arrived before anything happened to me. Luckily, I hate that word now. They said he used Hinge to find people, that he always convinced them to visit his flat first. They said last girl never made it to dinner. They were still searching for her. I nearly collapsed when I heard that. I kept grabbing my own arms trying to keep myself together. I stared at the plastic-covered walls, thinking about how close I came to becoming just another shape wrapped in silence. They escorted me outside while the guy kept shouting that I ruined everything. He yelled that I should have trusted him, that I was perfect for this. Officers shoved him into a car and shut the door before he could spit more words at me. I rode in a police car home, silent the entire way. My phone kept buzzing with notifications from friends asking how the date was going. I didn't reply. I just sat there numb, replaying every second and wondering how many wrong decisions I made in 15 minutes. I deleted Hinge the moment I stepped inside my living room. I threw my clothes in the bin. I scrubbed my skin until it burned, trying to erase the feeling of that flat, the plastic touching my shoes. Every time I close my eyes now, I see the big wrapped shape against the wall and imagine how easily that could have been me. How fast someone can play normal long enough to trap you. Next time someone asks for help before dinner, I'm not going inside any door. I'm not trusting any smile. I'm done being the heavy thing someone wants to move. I always thought dating apps were just awkward conversations and maybe a few boring nights out. Nothing crazy. Nothing that would end up in nightmares or police reports. But then I matched with this girl who looked honestly too good to be true. Pretty, fun, chilled vibe in her pics. She liked scary films, hiking, and said she cooked the best food in the world. Her profile felt like it was built for me. We matched fast, started chatting even faster, and within a couple days she was inviting me over to see her place. She said she lived in this quiet area near the edge of the city where everything felt private and peaceful. I imagined some cozy little house with fairy lights and art prints and maybe a pet cat. She kept calling it her safe space. Her words. A safe space where we could hang out away from the noise. You know how that sounds when you're excited to meet someone. I didn't think twice. I should have. When I got there, she opened the door super quickly like she was waiting right behind it. Her smile looked a little too wide, but whatever. Maybe she was just excited too. She grabbed my wrist softly and pulled me inside like she didn't want the cold air to follow. The house looked normal at first glance. Clean, modern, maybe too clean like a staged house in an ad. No clutter. No signs anyone actually lived there. I joked in my head that she decorated like a furniture store. She showed me around. Living room, kitchen, a hallway with perfectly shut doors. She talked fast, switching topics without finishing sentences. I tried to keep up. Maybe she was nervous. She kept saying she couldn't wait to show me the coolest thing ever, but needed to save it for last. I tried to laugh along, but something in my stomach felt tight. I tried to ignore it. We sat down on the couch, and she asked if I trusted her. That was the first mini red flag. Who asked that before the date even starts? I said yeah, because I didn't want to be rude. Then she told me she got a secret panic room built into the house. She said she was obsessed with security and feeling protected. I said I'd never seen one before. She said I was about to. She led me down a short hallway to a door that didn't match the others. Metal. Heavy. Thick frame like it was made to survive a war. She grinned like a kid showing off a toy and typed something on a keypad. The lock clicked open, and she swung the door inward with a huge dramatic sweep of her arms like she was revealing a prize on a game show. The panic room looked nothing like I expected. No bunk beds. No food storage. Not a single couch or blanket or comfy chair. Just screens. So many screens. All over the walls. Each one was showing a room. Like bedroom corners, hallways, living rooms, people sleeping. Different houses. Different families. Kids, couples, strangers. All of them being watched. I tried to tell myself maybe these were her own properties or something, like rental houses she monitored. But that was dumb and I knew it. The angles weren't from normal security cams either. They were hidden, tucked up in corners, behind vents, inside objects. Spying. I froze completely and she stepped inside behind me. She whispered that this was her true hobby, watching people, understanding them. She said she kept notes on their routines. She said she felt closer to them than she ever did to people in real life. My voice got trapped somewhere in my chest, and I couldn't decide if I should run or pretend to think it was cool just to survive. She pointed at one screen where a woman was brushing her teeth in her bathroom. She told me that was her favorite person to watch. She said the woman always looked lonely. She said she sometimes left gifts at her front door just to see how she reacted. She started giggling like that was some normal cute thing. I stepped back toward the exit, but she quickly moved behind me. The big metal door was still open, but she was blocking it slightly. I said something like maybe we should go back to the couch and chill. I tried to keep it calm. Casual. She shook her head and grabbed the edge of the door like she was getting ready to close it. She told me I was lucky to see this. Not many people get invited. She said once the door shut, I'd understand how safe she felt inside. She said we could stay in there for hours getting to know each other better. She said I was special because I didn't judge her. My heart sprinted so fast it felt like it was going to tear up. I told her I forgot something in the car. She said I didn't. Her eyes locked onto mine so hard I almost looked away. She started pushing the door. Slow but steady. Her fingers tight around the handle. The lock mechanism glinted like it couldn't wait to trap me. And then the loudest knocking I've ever heard in my life exploded through the hallway. Police, open up. She froze, jaw clenched. Footsteps outside. More booming hits against the door. She hissed under her breath that someone must have tipped them off. She looked furious now. Not scared. Furious. She tried to swing the panic room door closed faster, but I shoved past her shoulder and slammed my hand on the keypad area, stopping the movement just long enough for her grip to slip. I threw myself out into the hallway as the main front door burst inward and officers rushed the house. They yelled orders. She ran the opposite direction like she knew every escape route in that place. A cop grabbed me and pulled me behind them like I was a victim in a film scene. I tried to explain, but I couldn't get words to make sense. One officer shouted that they had multiple reports of break-ins across the city, and they traced devices to this house. Yeah, devices. The hidden cameras. The panic room was basically her own private invasion station. The officers swarmed the place and cornered her near the back door before she could slip out. Someone switched off the screens. Someone else put cuffs on her while she screamed that she was just watching, just curious. She kept shouting that she wasn't hurting anyone. Like watching strangers sleep was totally fine. I sat on the ground shaking like I was freezing even though the house was warm. An officer knelt next to me and asked if I was okay. I didn't answer. I stared at the panic room door still hanging wide open. I imagined what could have happened if they came even 5 minutes later. The metal door locked. Me trapped with someone who loved spying more than living. Me watched like the rest of those people, but stuck in the center of it. I keep thinking about all those screens, all those houses, all those people who didn't know they were part of some girl's twisted idea of feeling safe. I think about how close I was to becoming another screen in our collection. I haven't slept properly since. Every camera on every shop ceiling feels like her eyes watching me. Hinge is deleted. My trust is deleted too.